Assassin's Creed is pretty expansive in terms of how much lore there is. When you think of the series, a lot of things might come to mind. The beautifully detailed historical settings, the never-ending Assassin vs Templar conflict, the modern day storyline, or the sheer amount of lore within every game. But with so much going on, it's no surprise that the series can feel a bit overwhelming, leaving many people wondering what on earth is actually happening here. I mean, just think about it. How did we go from this, to this, to this, and then to this? The franchise spans an incredible timeline, starting with the origins of everything back in 75,000 BCE, with a race known as the Isu, and continuing all the way to the modern day storyline set in, you guessed it, 2024. I've spent a lot of time with the Assassin's Creed series, so I think I'm in a pretty good spot to help clear up some of the confusion that both new and long-time fans might have. In this video, I'm breaking down the entire timeline in chronological order, basically the order that things actually happened. With the next game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, releasing kind of soon, now feels like the perfect time to dive into this massive interconnected story. Well, kind of interconnected. I decided not to do this video in the release order of the games because after a certain point, things get so messy that it stops making sense, and it would be way too confusing to follow. I'm mainly talking about the modern day storyline here. After Assassin's Creed 3, the modern day plot gets so scattered that explaining the games in release order just wouldn't make any sense. So what I've done is include the modern day at the end of the video, as it gets a lot more expansive with the chronological order lore. All timestamps are presented to you so you can skip around if needed. With all of that out of the way, if you do enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, it really helps. And this one definitely took me a while to put together. So let's jump right into the mess that is the Assassin's Creed timeline. To start off our pretty messy Assassin's Creed timeline, we need to travel way back, far beyond hundreds or even thousands of years. We're talking about 75,000 BCE. That's right, the Assassin's Creed story begins long before humanity as we know it. Before humans existed, there was another race, known by many different names. The first civilization, those who came before, but most famously and commonly known as the Isu. The Isu were a highly advanced humanoid species that ruled the earth approximately 77,000 years ago, long before humans rose to prominence. The exact origins of the Isu are unclear, even to them. Nobody knows the exact year they decided to appear, but they evolved on Earth over millennia, developing technological advancements and an understanding of the natural world that far surpassed anything humanity could achieve for tens of thousands of years. To humans, their power made them seem like gods, but make no mistake, they were definitely not gods. They were just incredibly advanced. Their civilization spanned the globe, with cities and factions scattered across the earth. They lived in an era known as the Isu Era, and were responsible for the creation of powerful artifacts known as the Pieces of Eden. Remember that name, Pieces of Eden. The franchise has a strong focus on Pieces of Eden, but for all their knowledge, the Isu were definitely not perfect. There were internal conflicts and rivalries among them, which often led to a lot of problems. One of the Isu's greatest creations was humanity itself, through a project called Project Anthropos, which was around 75,145 BCE. They created Homo sapiens, designing humans to survive Earth's tough conditions. But you see, the main reason for creating humans was to use them as workers and slaves. Humans to the Isu were built to be obedient and controlled by the Pieces of Eden I mentioned earlier, which could manipulate their minds. The Isu also made Neanderthals, who were tougher and used for exploring and fighting. However, something unexpected happened during these experiments. Some humans were born immune to the control of the Pieces of Eden. These were referred to as hybrids, and these hybrids had the freedom to think and act independently, which eventually led to rebellion. The rebellion began when two hybrids who you may have heard of, known as Adam and Eve, stole an apple of Eden. This sparked a massive war between the Isu and their human creations. Think of it like this: the Isu had the better technology and strength, but they lacked something that the humans thrived in, and that was simply the sheer numbers on their side. The war lasted 10 years and took a huge toll on both sides. While the Isu were fighting this war, they failed to notice a bigger problem, and that problem was a massive solar flare that was about to hit the Earth. This was known as the Great Catastrophe, and this event would destroy much of the planet. Some Isu like Minerva, Juno and Jupiter, who were known as the Capitoline Triad, worked on ways to stop it. But you see, the war that they had between the humans had distracted them. In fact, they locked themselves within a vault known as the Grand Temple, which, fun fact, in the modern day is actually within New York. Now, the reason they locked themselves in this vault was to develop and evaluate many potential solutions. Once they identified the most viable options, they conducted experiments in hidden underground temples scattered worldwide. However, none of their experiments were successful, so in the end they could not finish their plans in time. The solar flare struck with devastating effects, flipping Earth's magnetic field and causing widespread destruction. Fires burned for weeks, earthquakes shattered the land, and both Isu and humans were nearly wiped out. Keyword nearly. The Great Catastrophe ended the war, but you see, it came at a massive cost. Fewer than 10,000 humans and even fewer Isu survived. The survivors, both Isu and humans, had to work together to rebuild the world. However, the Isu could not recover, and this was due to the changes to the environment and their small numbers, which practically made them impossible for them to survive as a species. Within a century, they were almost entirely extinct. Despite their downfall, the Isu made sure to leave their mark. Minerva, one of the Capitoline tribe members, left messages and warnings for the future generations of humans, hoping they could prevent another catastrophe. She also created a device called the Eye, which allowed the Isu to look into the future and explore different possibilities and solutions to stop future disasters from happening. Now, Juno, who was one of the three Isu, had different ideas. She was not exactly on the same page as her other two members. She wanted to control the world even after their physical deaths, because she saw humans as inferior. Now, apart from those three Isu, there were some Isu that transferred their consciousness into digital systems, or passed their DNA into humans, creating people known as sages. These sages carried the memories of the Isu, though it often drove them mad. Now, do note, sages do not carry their physical power, just memories. I feel like that's a slight misconception within the Assassin's Creed fanbase. Several other Isu like Consus and Alethea also kind of survived by digitally preserving their consciousness. Another group of Isu that after wanted to live on were known as the Aesir, a group of powerful Isu from Scandinavia. You've definitely heard of the Aesir before outside of Assassin's Creed. They were remembered as the Norse gods, becoming a major part of Norse myths and religion. However, thanks to the release of Assassin's Creed Valhalla in 2020, which further made the lore a lot more messy, Ubisoft just had to implement such characters. All of this would have been much more simple if Valhalla did not release. Anyway, the Aesir featured well-known figures like Odin, Thor, Freya, Loki, Tyr and Balder. These were among the Isu who survived the Great Catastrophe, fully aware that their numbers had dwindled to only a handful, so what they did was use their advanced technology to pass on their memories and personalities. They did this by encoding their essence into human DNA, allowing parts of them to appear in future generations. However, it wasn't perfect. Some of the humans who carried their memories experienced mental struggles because of it. Eivor, Basim. So yeah, even though the Isu disappeared, their influence is still very much felt in the Assassin's Creed universe. Take the Pieces of Eden for example, those powerful artifacts I mentioned earlier. These artifacts were made by the Isu and became the centerpiece of a major conflict between two human factions, the Assassins versus the Templars. By understanding the Isu's history, we can get a much better grasp on everything that comes after. You know, that's why many people hate the Isu and the modern day side of this franchise. It makes things complicated. People just want to play Assassin's Creed for the Assassins and Templars, and that is 100% understandable. Anyway, let's finally move on away from the Isu era and dive into the next part of the Assassin's Creed timeline. Many years after the Isu, in fact saying many years is an understatement, we are now in 1334 BCE, so that's over 76,000 years later. We now have the Order of the Ancients, a secretive group founded by the Egyptian pharaoh Smenkhare. The Order of the Ancients are a group that would eventually turn into the Templars, but the difference between the Order of the Ancients is that they saw the Isu as gods, whereas the Templars, well, I'll get onto them when I get onto them. The Order of the Ancients' main goal was to find and use ancient Isu technology, believing it would give them immense power and control. Over time, their influence spread far and wide, shaping the history of empires across centuries. The Order began when Smenkhare discovered an Isu vault. To keep the vault hidden, he connected it to his own tomb. This marked the start of the Order, which focused on finding and controlling Isu relics. From Egypt, the Order of the Ancients expanded into Persia, becoming a major power during the reign of the Achaemenid Empire. By the 5th century BCE, the Order had grown into a massive organization, influencing Achaemenid rulers like Darius I and Xerxes I. Their aim was to control these kings, to strengthen their hold on power. During Xerxes' reign, the Order worked with another secretive group, the Cult of Cosmos, who are the main villains in a game called Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which we'll get into when the time is right. Anyway, the Order worked with this group to install Xerxes as a ruler over Greece. While their goals often aligned, the Order did not realize the cult was stirring chaos with the Peloponnesian War, something the Order did not approve of. Not everyone in Persia was okay with the Order's growing control. A group of Persian elites including Amorges, Pactius and Artabanus, who would later go on to have the name Darius, formed a group known as the Protectors of Persia to fight back. This resistance led to the assassination of Xerxes I in 465 BCE at the hands of Artabanus himself, the first man in history to wield a hidden blade. It's a bit confusing because, you know, the first person to wield a hidden blade should not come before the actual Brotherhood is formed, but sure. Anyway, after Xerxes was killed, the Order set their sights on his son, Artaxerxes I. Artabanus, who had just assassinated Xerxes, feared that Artaxerxes would become another puppet for the Order, so he planned to assassinate him too. But Amorges, once his ally, betrayed him and joined the Order, believing they could help Persia thrive. This forced Artabanus to flee, eventually taking on the name Darius. Now do remember that name Darius, it becomes very important quite soon. And now we move on to the first actual Assassin's Creed game we can finally talk about. The story of Assassin's Creed Odyssey kicks off in 480 BCE with the legendary King Leonidas leading his 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae. Now fun fact, this battle shown in the game is almost a one-to-one replica of the movie 300 in quite a lot of scenes. Anyway, King Leonidas and his Spartans bravely defend a narrow pass against the massive Persian army, holding them off long enough to make their stand famous throughout history. Shortly after the battle, the game shifts to 431 BCE, 49 years after the Battle of Thermopylae, where we get introduced to a Spartan named Cassandra, and she is living as a mercenary on the island of Kephallonia. She was raised by a man named Marcos, who is a crafty, loving but also unreliable man. Cassandra learned to fight and survive on her own. After dealing with some local troubles such as a loan gone wrong with a crime lord, Cassandra secures a ship named the Adrestia. With her new ally, Captain Barnabas, she sets out to find answers about her family and her past. Her journey takes her to Megaris, where she learns her father Nicolaus, known as the Wolf of Sparta, is none other than a Spartan general. This brings back some pretty painful memories of her childhood. You see, years earlier, a prophecy from the Oracle of Delphi led to her infant brother Alexios being condemned to death. Well, it depends actually. If you choose your protagonist to be Alexios, it would be Cassandra who would be sacrificed on the cliff. But for the sake of the events, Cassandra is the canon character. Don't ask why, just go with it. Anyway, Cassandra tried to save Alexios from getting tossed off a cliff, but accidentally caused both Alexios and a Spartan elder to fall from Mount Aegetos. Her family turned on her, and Nicolaus was forced to cast her out. Meeting Nicolaus again is emotional, and we can choose whether Cassandra forgives him or not. Either way, Nicolaus reveals that he is not her biological father, and suggests finding her mother Myrrhine for answers. Cassandra soon discovers the cult of Cosmos, the same cult I talked about earlier that worked alongside the Order of the Ancients. This cult was manipulating the entire Peloponnesian War, and they thrive on chaos and have targeted Cassandra's family. While infiltrating a cult meeting, Cassandra learns that her brother Alexios is alive, but has been brainwashed by the cult, and now goes by the name Demos. To take on the cult, Cassandra allies with historical figures like the historian Herodotus and Athens leader Pericles. Herodotus introduces her to an Isu vault on Andros Island, where she learns the spear of Leonidas is tied to none other than the Isu. I told you it would all link back. By using shards from the cult's strange pyramid, Cassandra upgrades the spear, unlocking its hidden power. Now after this moment, Cassandra's journey spans all of Greece. She fights for Athens and Sparta, uncovers more about her family, and eventually reunites with her mother Myrrhine on Naxos Island. Myrrhine has been living as a pirate under the alias Phoenix. Together they plan to reclaim their Spartan heritage. But you see, here's the thing, Myrrhine also reveals a shocking truth. The truth is that Cassandra's biological father is none other than Pythagoras, an Isu descendant who is guarding the gateway to Atlantis. And yes, that is the underwater city you're thinking about. I did say the lore would get messy. Cassandra travels to Thera, an island that sits atop the gateway to Atlantis, and here she meets her biological father Pythagoras, who asks her for help in sealing Atlantis to protect its secrets. She must retrieve powerful artifacts guarded by mythical creatures like the Minotaur, the Cyclops and the Sphinx. And that is where we pause our story with Cassandra in the base game of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and now we move on to the first DLC within this game, Legacy of the First Blade. Shortly after the encounter with her biological father Pythagoras, Cassandra found herself in Macedonia after responding to a call for help. When she arrived, she saw Spartan soldiers burning the village and capturing civilians. True to form, Cassandra jumped into action, defeating the soldiers and freeing their prisoners. However, their victory did not last long. She was ambushed by a masked man and Persian soldiers. Though she did fight them off, the masked man managed to escape. During the chaos, a Persian archer named Natakas came to her aid and warned her about the danger threatening the village. Natakas revealed that a figure called the Huntsman, who was a member of the Order of the Ancients, was after Cassandra because she was deemed a quote-unquote tainted one. While helping the village deal with this threat, Cassandra was attacked by an old hooded man wielding a strange blade. Before things escalated, Natakas intervened and introduced the man as his father Darius, the same Darius I told you guys to remember about earlier. I talked about how he was the man who assassinated King Xerxes Xerxes I, and later disappeared to give himself the name Darius. Well, now Cassandra has learned about all of this as well. She decides to team up with Natakas and Darius to join them both in dismantling the Order's operations in Macedonia. Let's fast forward a little bit. After they take down the operations happening in Macedonia, all of a sudden, whoa, Cassandra and Natakas have a son, and their son is named Elpidios. Who the hell would have seen that coming? Here's a fun fact about Elpidios. He would later become the ancestor of Aya of Alexandria. More on that later on. Now, while raising her son, Cassandra continued to work as a mercenary. She often had to leave home to take on contracts, but always returned to her family, cherishing the life that they had built together. Well, that peace was shattered when the Order of the Ancients, led by Amorges, who remember was part of Darius' group of Persian elites back when they took out King Xerxes, launched a brutal attack on Daim. The settlement with Cassandra, Natakas and her son Elpidios had settled down. Cassandra fought desperately to protect her home and her loved ones, killing soldiers as she helped Natakas and Elpidios escape. But you see, the attack was a ruse. While Cassandra returned to save Darius from a deadly ambush, the Order struck again, killing Natakas and abducting Elpidios. At this point, Cassandra was simply heartbroken and so angry. She vowed to rescue her son and avenge Natakas, swearing at his grave to bring their child back. Her search led her to Messenia, where she discovered the region was controlled by the Order of Dominion. Cassandra and Darius teamed up to dismantle their network by freeing slaves, assassinating some pretty important members, and sinking a Spartan fleet allied with them. Her relentless pursuit brought her face to face with Amorges. After a fierce fight, she and Darius defeated him, and he revealed where her son Elpidios was being kept before dying. Cassandra reunited with Elpidios on a small island south of Messenia. But here's the part that not everybody knows about. Cassandra knew that the Order would never stop hunting them. To keep Elpidios safe, she entrusted him to Darius, who promised to raise him far from danger. Cassandra wrapped him in a blanket, said her tearful goodbyes, and watched Darius sail away with her son to Egypt. Later, Cassandra hunted down its remaining members, and eventually killed the last ancient in the region, finally ending the reign in Messenia. After the chaotic events of everything happening in the Legacy of the First Blade DLC, we now finally return back to the base game of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. At this point throughout her journey, Cassandra has several tense encounters with her brother Deimos. The cult of Cosmos has twisted him into their enforcer, and their sibling bond is tested by years of separation and manipulation. In a final confrontation at Mount Taygetos, Cassandra can try to redeem Deimos, convincing him to abandon the cult or fight him, which can also lead to his death. After taking down the cult of Cosmos, Cassandra returns to the cult's hideout under Delphi. There, she finds Aspasia, who reveals herself as the cult's leader. Aspasia explains that she originally wanted to use the cult to bring peace to Order, but abandoned it when it spiraled out of control. Cassandra must decide Aspasia's fate before destroying the cult's pyramid, which gives her a vision of the future struggle between the Assassins and Templars. With the cult defeated, Cassandra completes her father's mission by sealing Atlantis. Pythagoras hands her the staff of Hermes Trismegistus, which grants her, you'll never guess, immortality. Who would have seen that coming? This burden, however, remains her secret as she continues her adventures in mystery, with nobody knowing about her new immortality power. After the events of the base game of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Cassandra's life led her to a life of solitude and purpose. She dedicated herself to locating and securing many pieces of Eden to protect humanity from their misuse. As time passed, Cassandra watched friends like Barnabas and her eagle companion Icaros sadly pass away, leaving her to continue her mission alone, which is pretty sad. I mean, hey, that's the price of immortality, I guess. Her immortality allowed her to witness the rise and fall of empires and leaders across centuries. She kept a low profile in her travels, staying in one place only briefly to avoid attention or forming deep connections. At one point, Cassandra traveled to Egypt during its Hellenistic period and visited the Great Library of Alexandria. There, she preserved Herodotus' manuscript, ensuring his stories were safeguarded for future generations. If you thought we were done with Cassandra, well, you must be mistaken. Remember how I said she was immortal? Well, you see, one of her many immortal journeys led her through the Qin dynasty of China, or more specifically during the events of Assassin's Creed Jade, a mobile game that as of right now has not been released. So now we arrive in the 3rd century BCE, during the rise of one of China's first unified empires. It's a time of new trade routes and cultural exchanges between the East and the West, but also a period full of dangers and hidden threats. You play as a protagonist who is the adopted child of Wei Yu, a legendary warrior and ally of Cassandra. Fun fact, Wei Yu has a statue under Villa Auditore in the game Assassin's Creed 2 from back in 2009. Anyway, the protagonist's journey in Jade begins as a mission for revenge after a close friend's betrayal. But as they dig deeper, the protagonist uncovers secrets about the past and faces a powerful force that could destroy everything they care about. And as of right now, that is all we know about Assassin's Creed Jade set in 215 BCE. We don't know yet how Cassandra will play a role. So with that said, let's move on to the next part of the Assassin's Creed timeline. We then move on to Assassin's Creed Origins, set 166 years after the events of Assassin's Creed Jade. Now, as the name suggests, Assassin's Creed Origins dives into the origins of the Assassin Brotherhood. But before we get there, we first need to go over the timeline events of this game. It's a game set during the late Ptolemaic period in Egypt, and the story explores our protagonist Bayek in his journey for vengeance, transformation, and the foundation of a legacy that will shape history. In 49 BCE, Bayek and his young son Khemu are captured by a group of masked men and are taken to a hidden vault in the Temple of Amun. The men force Bayek to use a strange golden orb to open the vault. During their escape attempt, things go terribly wrong, to the point where it could not go any more wrong. You see, Bayek does the impossible. He accidentally kills his very own son Khemu by accidentally stabbing him in the chest. This heartbreaking moment sets Bayek on a mission to hunt down the men responsible for his son's death, which is himself. Nah, I'm just kidding. A year later, Bayek starts tracking down the masked men. His first target, Rujek, or the Heron, is killed inside the bent pyramid. We can see this during the incredible and Oscar-worthy performance opening cutscene.
We will find you. We will find you in your sleep. Sleep. I never sleep. I just wait in the shadows, and I will kill you all. Everyone who sniffed the air that day in Siwa!
After returning to his homeland Siwa and surviving an ambush, Bayek kills yet another target, Medinamun, or the Ibis, who had been torturing villagers to open the same vault Bayek and his son Khemu were forced to try and open. With two of the men dead, Bayek then heads on to Alexandria to find his wife Aya, who has been working on the same mission. In Alexandria, Aya reveals that she's already taken out two other masked men, the Vulture and the Ram. So at this point, 4 of the masked men had been taken out. Aya then gives Bayek a weapon known as a Hidden Blade, which is a weapon of stealth, and helps him target Eudorus, who is another target. Bayek does eventually kill him in a bathhouse during one of the most awkward fights I've ever seen. However, you see, during that fight, Bayek loses part of his ring finger. This loss of a ring finger will later become a symbol of sacrifice tied to the Hidden Blade, as well as the Brotherhood itself. Bayek and Aya soon learn that the masked men they've been taking out are part of a bigger group called the Order of the Ancients. Remember those people? I've mentioned them earlier before the events of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So you can start to understand why it's kind of confusing that Assassin's Creed Odyssey takes place before Origins, despite Origins being the origins of the entire Brotherhood. Regardless, the Order of the Ancients manipulates Egypt's rulers, including Ptolemy XIII, to control the country. Cleopatra, who has been ousted from the throne by her brother, recruits Bayek and Aya to help her regain power. She gives them the name of 4 more Order members to hunt down: the Scarab, the Hyena, the Lizard, and the Crocodile. Bayek begins taking out the Order one by one. The Scarab, who is known as Taharka, first poses as an ally, and then poisons Bayek and leaves him to die in the desert. Bayek escapes this and kills him, learning just how far the Order's reach goes. The Hyena, who is known to be Khaliset, is a grieving mother using Isu technology to try and bring her daughter back to life. Bayek feels sympathy for her loss, but knows he must stop her experiment, so he kills her. The Lizard, also known as Setepi, is a priest spreading a curse in Memphis to turn people against Cleopatra. Bayek uncovers his plan and kills him. The Crocodile, who is known as Berenike, is responsible for the death of a young girl named Shadia, which, out of topic, is probably one of the saddest quests in this entire franchise, hands down. And that's no exaggeration. Anyway, Bayek eventually uncovers Berenike's identity and avenges Shadia's death. As Bayek and Aya continue their fight, they learn the Order's influence stretches beyond Egypt. 2 more members, the Scorpion and the Jackal, are part of Ptolemy's royal guard. Bayek stops the Jackal, who is revealed to be a man named Septimius, from killing Cleopatra's allies Julius Caesar, but cannot save Pompey the Great. Cleopatra and Caesar join forces. They defeat Ptolemy and take control of Egypt. However, once Cleopatra takes power, she betrays Bayek and Aya, cutting ties with them. The couple realizes that Cleopatra and Caesar are now under the Order's influence, and their fight is far from over. The leader of the Order is revealed to be a man named Flavius Metellus, or as his Order name suggests, the Lion. And his ally Septimius uses the Golden Orb and Alexander the Great Staff of Eden to open the vault inside of Siwa. Inside, they find a map, revealing the locations of more pieces of Eden. Flavius uses the Apple of Eden to control people in Cyrene. Bayek tracks him down and kills him, finally avenging Khemu's death and many targets later. After those events, Aya travels to Rome, joining forces with Brutus and Cassius to fight the Order's influence over there. She and Bayek come to a heartbreaking realization: their mission is bigger than their personal relationship. They part ways, but vow to fight for freedom in the shadows. Together, they lay the foundation for the Hidden Ones, the group that will evolve into the Assassin Brotherhood. In a symbolic moment, Bayek lets go of the last tie of his past to Khemu, which is his eagle skull charm. The imprint it leaves behind in the sand becomes the emblem of their new brotherhood. However, this new brotherhood gets expanded upon in a DLC known as the Hidden Ones, which, fun fact, is what my YouTube name is based on, which I don't think takes a genius to figure out. 4 years after founding the Hidden Ones as shown in the base game of Origins, Bayek gets a letter from Tahira, a member of the Hidden Ones in Sinai, telling him that 2 of their comrades have been killed and the region is in chaos. When Bayek arrives, he meets Tahira and Gamilat, the leader of the local rebels. Together, they plan to weaken the Romans by taking out General Rufio and his lieutenants. They succeed in taking out the lieutenants and force Rufio to surface. The Romans strike back hard, discovering the Hidden Ones' hideout and launching a surprise attack. Bayek, Tahira and their ally Kashta are captured and Bayek is crucified. Just when it seems like the end, Aya, or rather at this point, she is now going by the name Aminet, arrives from Rome and rescues him. They free Kashta as well, but sadly Tahira dies from her injuries. Before her death, Aminet warns Bayek that the Sinai branch has been too loud and reckless, attracting Roman attention. She also suspects somebody from within is stirring trouble. As Bayek and Aminet investigate, they catch Roman soldiers burning down a village. After stopping the attack and killing Rufio, Aminet reveals a dark truth. Gamilat, the leader of the rebels, has been provoking Roman soldiers to attack villages, using the chaos to recruit more rebels. His actions have caused unnecessary massacres, all for the sake of building his army. Bayek, who is disgusted by this betrayal of their ideals, confronts Gamilat. Although Gamilat defends his choices, he eventually shows remorse as Bayek kills him. After all of this has occurred, both Bayek and I decide it's time to set clear principles for the Hidden Ones. They vow to protect innocents and never exploit them. Unlike Gamilat, Aminet returns to Rome to continue her fight, while Bayek stays in Egypt, committed to upholding their new creed and strengthening their brotherhood. The final DLC for Assassin's Creed Origins is a bit different, as it's not exactly the most important in terms of following the timeline. However, it's still good to know about. So 4 years after the base game of Origins, which is the exact same time frame as the Hidden Ones DLC, Bayek receives a letter from Aminet asking him to investigate strange events happening in Thebes. Rumors of a powerful relic and a deadly curse are spreading fear throughout the city. When Bayek arrives in Thebes, he witnesses an apparition of Queen Nefertiti attacking the locals. After defeating the ghostly figure, Bayek travels to Luxor to meet Aminet's contact Murti. She explains that a relic, rumored to be stolen from an ancient pharaoh's tomb, is believed to be the source of the curse. Murti directs Bayek to the temple of Karnak to seek answers from the high priestess Isidora. Bayek's investigation takes him into mystical visions of the afterlife, where he confronts the souls of Nefertiti in Aru and Akhenaten in Aten. By defeating them in the afterlife realms, Bayek releases their spirits, allowing them to rest in peace. Bayek uncovers that the relic responsible for the curse was in Isidora's possession all along. Isidora was seeking revenge for her mother's death at the hands of tomb robbers, and had used the relic to conjure the curse. Bayek confronts her in Tutankhamun's tomb during a ritual and assassinates her, ending the curse once and for all. With the relic recovered, Bayek gives it to an Egyptian smuggler named Suthek for safekeeping, asking him to bury it where nobody can find it, making sure the horrors of the curse will not return. And so that is the end of Assassin's Creed Origins in the timeline. Buckle up because we have a long way to go. We are now finally out of the BCE era, and we are now in the Common Era, in the year of 861. So from the events of Assassin's Creed Origins, we have now travelled almost 900 years later. Do you know what's crazy about that? The fact that we've just travelled 900 years and there is no Assassin's Creed game within that time period. That to me just says a lot about how much there is to talk about and show for this franchise. It literally can never run out. Anyway, we now have Assassin's Creed Mirage, taking place in 861. The events of this game is set in the heart of the crowded city of Baghdad during the Islamic Golden Age, and follows the journey of Basim ibn Ishaq, a character who appears in the game before Assassin's Creed Mirage. We'll get into Basim more later in the video, but for now let's go over the timeline of this game. So Basim starts out as a thief in Anbar, scraping by with the help of his best friend Nihal. He's haunted by terrifying visions of a jinn, which in Arabic mythology is a spirit inhabiting the earth but unseen by humans. A jinn is capable of assuming various forms and exercising extraordinary powers. Basim dreams of becoming something bigger because, he's a street thief. What he deems as something bigger is joining the Hidden Ones. Now at this point, we should know what the Hidden Ones are. I talked about how they were formed in Assassin's Creed Origins 900 years earlier, so it's clear that the Hidden Ones have made a name for themselves across the globe. Now Basim does get his chance to join when he meets Rashan, a skilled hidden one, but she's not sold on him at first. Basim, being the determined guy he is, decides to prove himself. In 861, things take a wild turn. Basim breaks into the Caliph's winter palace, hoping to snag an artifact that the hidden ones are after. But you see, instead of a simple heist, he ends up witnessing a group from the Order of the Ancients threatening the Caliph. When the Caliph attacks him, Nihal steps in and kills the ruler. They barely escape with the artifact, a mysterious seal, but the fallout is pretty bad. Basim's thief network gets targeted, forcing him to flee with Rashan to Alamut, which is the hidden one's base. At Alamut, Basim dives into intense training. Rashan mentors him, teaching him the ways of the Brotherhood and the Assassin's Creed. After months of hard work, Basim officially becomes a hidden one and sets off on his first mission, stopping the Order of the Ancients from taking over Baghdad. When Basim gets to Baghdad, he teams up with mentor Rashan and also a man named Fulad, who is a master assassin of the hidden ones of that time. A master assassin means he's well established within the hidden ones and is at the highest rank apart from being the mentor. Anyway, Basim meets with these two to take down the Order. However, the Order is everywhere. In the markets, the House of Wisdom, and even the harbour. They're using ancient Isu tech to push their sinister plans, and Basim makes it his mission to stop them. In the Abbasiyah district, Basim uncovers a plot to build a strange machine called the Al-Ru at the House of Wisdom. He shuts this down by taking out key Order members like Hassan and Fazl Fahim al-Kemsa. In the Kark district, Basim dismantles a blockade that the Order has set up to hunt for an artifact. He faces tough opponents like Javed and Sahel, but Basim uses his new trained stealth and skills to come out on top. In Sharqiya, Basim works with Ali ibn Muhammad and the Zanj rebellion to strike back at the Order's brutal tactics. The rebellion costs many lives, such as Ali's second in command, but Basim avenges them by taking out one of the Order's most cunning leaders, Wasif al-Tarki. Now, while all of this was happening, Basim reconnects with Nihal. Remember her? This was his childhood friend when Basim was a street thief. Basim met with her, but she questions the hidden one's motives. She suggests the Order might have answers about Basim's visions, but he brushes it off, staying loyal to the Brotherhood. Eventually, Basim tracks down the leader of the Order, Kabiha, a concubine in the Caliphal palace. During their confrontation, Kabiha drops a bombshell. She knows who Basim really is. She tells him to investigate a hidden Isu temple under Alamut. But before he can act, Rashan steps in and kills Kabiha. But the revelation sticks with Basim. Basim cannot let it go. He defies the Brotherhood and explores the Isu temple. What he finds changes everything. His visions and his connection to Nihal are not random. Get ready for this because this is a bombshell. What he finds in that vault is that he is the reincarnation of Loki, the Isu trickster. It's even crazier when you realize that Nihal is not even a real person. She's a manifestation of Loki's consciousness. Oh, and the Jinn he's been seeing throughout the game, well, that's Loki's traumatic memories coming to surface. Basim is now faced with this truth and decides to embrace Loki's memories, merging with Nihal and becoming whole. This changes Basim completely. While he stays with the hidden ones for now, his loyalty isn't the same. His former mentor Rashan resigns in frustration, but Basim is welcomed back by the rest of the Brotherhood. With Loki's memories now a part of him, Basim starts planning his next move. He's no longer just focused on the Creed, he wants to find others like him, reincarnated Isu, and figure out what this means for his future. And so the next game I talk about will play a massive part in this. That was just a prequel in a way for the events of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Around 8 to 12 years after the events of Assassin's Creed Mirage, we now move on to a game that came out before Mirage, which is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Think of Mirage as a prequel to this game. Now, in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we step into the boots of Eivor, a Viking raider from Norway. Now, for the sake of canon, I will be referring to Eivor as her, because the canon choice is the female Eivor, even though I think the male Eivor fits this game a lot more. Anyway, the game is set in 9th century England, and it explores Eivor's role in shaping her clan's future while uncovering ancient secrets tied to the Hidden Ones and the Order of the Ancients. Eivor's life starts with heartbreak. As a child, she watches her parents get murdered by Kjotve the Cruel, their rival clan leader. Eivor does manage to barely escape, but in the process, she's attacked by a wolf, leaving her with a scar and the nickname Wolf-Kissed. Fast forward to adulthood, and Eivor is a fierce warrior seeking revenge. During an escape to kill Kjotve, she's somehow captured, but manages to escape and reclaim her father's axe. Back home, Eivor reunites with her adopted brother Sigurd, who's just returned from a voyage. Sigurd brings two mysterious allies, Basim and Hytham, members of the Hidden Ones. You'll definitely remember Basim from the previous segment in this video where I went over Mirage. However, with Hytham, that's a name you won't know at this point, so I will explain who he is very briefly. Hytham is also a hidden one, just like Basim, but he's Basim's apprentice. Fun fact, we actually meet a young Hytham in a side quest in Mirage, but that's for another day. Now going back to Sigurd, he of course introduced these two to Eivor. and was inspired by their skills. So Sigurd gives Eivor a hidden blade. Together they form an alliance with King Harald to take down Kjotve. In a massive showdown, Eivor finally kills Kjotve, and this is where strange things happen. Eivor suddenly has a dream of Odin, which hints that her life is connected to something much bigger. If you recall at the start of the video where I went over the Isu Era, you'll remember that Odin was one of the Isu during that time who passed on his memories, so make a mental note of that. We'll be going back to this later on. Anyway, with Kjotve finally gone, King Harald announces his plans to unify Norway. Sigurd and Eivor, unwilling to give up their freedom, decide to leave Norway and start fresh in England. Along with their clan, they sail across the sea, eventually founding the settlement of Ravensthorpe. England is not exactly a peaceful haven. It's a land divided between Saxons, Danes and other factions, all fighting for power. Eivor and Sigurd realize that to secure their place, they'll need strong allies. This means making deals, fighting battles, and unraveling the evil schemes of the Order of the Ancients. For quite a while, Eivor's journey across England is all about forming alliances and defeating enemies. You know, just Viking stuff. In Grantebridge, Eivor helps Soma, a betrayed leader, reclaim her territory. In East Anglia, Eivor supports Oswald, a Saxon noble, proving himself as a worthy leader. Each area brings its own challenges, some political, some violent, but with every choice Eivor makes, it strengthens the Ravens clan's hold on England. Meanwhile, Eivor works with Hytham to track down members of the Order of the Ancients. These missions reveal how deeply the Order has infiltrated England, using ancient Isu artifacts to manipulate events. As if that was not enough, Eivor begins experiencing strange visions of Norse gods like Odin and Loki. Remember from Mirage, who did I say was Loki? It was indeed Basim. Of course, during this part of the story, Eivor has no idea. To Eivor, these aren't just dreams, they are hints of a deeper connection to the Isu. As the Raven clan gains power, things get tense between Eivor and Sigurd. Sigurd becomes obsessed with the idea that he's a god reborn, which leads him to Fulke, a fanatical member of the Order of the Ancients. Fulke captures Sigurd and tortures him, claiming he's special. Eivor gathers allies and storms Fulke's fortress to rescue her brother, but the experience leaves a lasting rift between them. Sigurd's belief in his divine destiny causes friction. He starts questioning Eivor's leadership, and their bond as siblings begin to crack. Despite the tension, Eivor stays focused on protecting her clan and dismantling the Order's influence. The climax of Eivor's story takes her back to Norway, where she and Sigurd discover an ancient Isu temple hidden in the mountains. Inside, they find a machine that creates a simulation of Valhalla, which, if you don't know, is a paradise for Viking warriors. Sigurd is enchanted by the illusion, but Eivor does realize it's all fake. She manages to snap Sigurd out of it, and they leave the simulation together. However, this is where the big plot twist of Assassin's Creed Valhalla occurs. Back in the real world, they're confronted by Basim. Remember how I said Basim is Loki and he's searching for those like him? Well, you see, since he's the reincarnation of Loki, this means he has the memories of Loki, and this also means he's out for revenge. Loki's grudge is with Eivor, who is the reincarnation of Odin in a past life, and Odin has imprisoned Loki's son. This all leads to a fierce breaking out, but Eivor traps Basim in the same machine that they found in the temple, leaving him stuck for eternity. Or so it seems. That part we'll leave towards the end of the video, because that part goes over the modern day, and if you've been paying attention to this video, we are not going over the modern day right now. Anyway, after taking down Basim and securing her position as the leader of the Raven clan, Eivor's life took a series of exciting and challenging turns. Her story after this moment is pretty intense. After defeating Basim, Eivor heads home to Ravensthorpe, where she officially becomes the leader of the Raven clan. She did not have much time to settle in as the leader, before she was called to action again. Trouble with the Saxons led by King Alfred kept stirring up conflict. Together with allies like Guthrum, Eivor joined the fight to defend their way of life. This all came to a head at the Battle of Sippenham, where Eivor led a massive force against the Saxons. This battle was a win, but it came at a very heavy price. She lost close friends like Soma and Hunwald. One of Eivor's biggest missions during this time was helping Hytham take down the Order of the Ancients. These guys were pulling the strings behind the scenes, and Eivor methodically hunted them down one by one. Now what's pretty surprising about this is Eivor learned that King Alfred himself had been working against the Order too. He did not agree with their methods, and wanted to create a new Christian order. Alfred even invited Eivor to join him in this mission, but Eivor turned him down, preferring to stay independent. Just to explain to you how crazy this is, Alfred is officially the leader of the Order of the Ancients, but he despises the obsession with the Isu, seeing it as a poor direct conflict with his Christian faith. To work against them, he takes on the persona of a poor fellow soldier of Christ, a term historically tied to the Templars. So in essence, the transition from the Order of the Ancients to the Templar Order was instrumental just because of Alfred himself, so just remember that from now on. Now, apart from the base game of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which mainly takes place in England, Ava was somebody that travelled to many other places, one of them being Ireland to help her cousin Barid and High King Flancina deal with a druid cult named the Children of Danu. After many battles, Ava brought down their leader and helped stabilize the region. Later, Ava went to Francia for the Siege of Paris DLC. This was another high stakes campaign, where she worked to minimize the bloodshed while taking part in some pretty, boring but also interesting at the same time political drama. Along the way, she saw firsthand how war can break even the strongest people, like the Frankish rebel leader Siegfried. In the end, Ava brokered a truce, but it was not a simple victory, it was a bittersweet ending to a hard-fought campaign. In 888, after wrapping up her adventures in Paris and Ireland, Ava was back in Ravensthorpe, which had grown into a lively little community. One of the new arrivals was Edith, a Scottish Norse woman from the Isle of Skye. She brought some bad news. Her homeland was being plagued by strange nightmares. Valka, who is Ravensthorpe's seer, was worried these nightmares might spread to Ravensthorpe and urged Ava to investigate. Valka also dropped a cryptic warning that Randvi, the chief advisor of Ravensthorpe, was somehow involved, and their paths would cross in a way that might not end well. Skeptical but curious, Ava decided to check it out. When Ava arrived, she discovered the village of Kiltaraglan. Things in the village were not great. People were having vivid, terrifying nightmares about an eagle and a braided warrior. At a church cemetery, Ava thought she had found Randvi, but it turned out to be somebody completely unexpected. It's none other than Cassandra. Now remember, during the events of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Cassandra is immortal because she wields the Staff of Hermes, which grants her immortality. And I did mention during that part that Cassandra was searching for pieces of Eden, and so the two characters crossed paths. Cassandra was after an Apple of Eden, an Isu artifact causing the nightmares. Naturally, the two misunderstood each other and ended up almost beating the shit out of each other. By the way, Cassandra would have totally won that fight, let's be real. Anyway, after battling to a stalemate, they decided to team up and break the curse, and pretty much they got to work. They found the apple, contained its energy, and broke the curse once and for all. With the nightmare finally over, Ava and Cassandra headed back to the village to celebrate. They crashed a wedding, had a drinking contest, flighted, and even got into a brawl with the bride's ex-lover. Cassandra even taught Ava the Greek word malaka, and by the end of the night, the two had formed an unlikely friendship. The next morning, Ava returned to England, carrying new insights about the Isu and a fresh appreciation for her new Greek friend. As the years went by, Ava came to realize that her role as Jarl Skona of the Raven clan had run its course. Around 889, she made the decision to step away from leadership and go on a personal journey to confront her memories of Odin and better understand the Isu legacy tied to her. She set out to say her final goodbyes to her closest friends and allies before leaving England for good. Ava rode away, eventually making her way to Vinland. In Vinland, Ava lived out her final years in solitude, abandoning her weapons and adopting a simple life among the Kanyan-Kahaka people. Remember those people, they'll be pretty important way later on. Ava spent her days reflecting on Odin's memories and uncovering knowledge about the Great Catastrophe and the Isu. After her peaceful death, she was laid to rest by the Kanyan-Kahaka in what would later become Concord, Massachusetts, leaving behind a Viking legacy of leadership and the pursuit of understanding. I've just now realized we have spoken about the last 4 games in the franchise, so now we're moving on over 300 years into the future to the journey of Altair ibn La'ahad, the very first assassin that we play as in the franchise. Now do note, at this point in the timeline, there are no more Hidden Ones or Order of the Ancients. Instead, it's now referred to as Assassins and Templars. In 1190, during the chaos of the Third Crusade, Assassin's Creed Altair's Chronicles gives us a glimpse into Altair's life before the very first Assassin's Creed game. The story follows Altair on a dangerous mission to find the Chalice, a powerful artifact said to unite warring factions and end the Crusades. It all kicks off when Altair returns to the assassin stronghold in Alep, only to find it under attack by the Templars. After driving them off, Altair's mentor Al-Mualim assigns him the task of finding the Chalice. His journey takes him to cities like Damascus, Tyre and Jerusalem, where he battles Templar leaders and uncovers hidden truths. In Damascus, Altair learns more about the Chalice after taking down a merchant named Tamir. His search leads him to Tyre, where he sneaks into a hospital to retrieve one of 3 keys needed to unlock the Temple of Sand, where the Chalice is believed to be. In Jerusalem, Altair faces Lord Basilisk, a savage Templar leader, and barely escapes with another key. When Altair reaches the Temple of Sand, he finds that the Chalice is not an object. It's a woman named Adha, somebody that he once knew. Things take a darker turn when he discovers that Harash, a high-ranking assassin, has betrayed the Brotherhood and is working with the Templars. Altair kills Harash, but cannot stop Basilisk from kidnapping Adha. In a dramatic showdown aboard Basilic's ship, Altair kills the Templar leader, but fails to save Adha, who is taken away on another vessel. As the game ends, Altair vows to find her, setting up his continued fight against the Templars, and the challenges that will shape him into the legendary assassin that we know. 1 year after the events of Altair's Chronicles, Altair's journey truly begins in a mainline entry with Assassin's Creed 1. Altair started the year with a mission to retrieve a powerful artifact from Solomon's temple. Malik and Kadar, his fellow assassins, were with him, but Altair's arrogance got the better of him. He broke the rules of the Creed by killing an innocent, recklessly confronting Templar Grandmaster Robert de Sable, and leaving his allies to fend for themselves. Malik lost his brother, his arm, and barely escaped with the artifact. Meanwhile, Altair fled the scene in disgrace. Back at Masyaf, things went from bad to worse. Altair's actions had led the Templars right to their doorstep, triggering a siege. After the dust settled, Al-Mualim, the mentor of the Brotherhood, punished Altair by stripping him of his rank, his weapons, and his status. To earn back his place, Altair was tasked with taking out 9 dangerous targets. These were powerful men fueling the chaos of the Crusades. Altair's hunt took him to Damascus, Acre, and Jerusalem. Each target revealed pieces of a larger puzzle involving the Templars and a mysterious artifact called the Apple of Eden. The first target was Tamir, a savage merchant exploiting the poor in Damascus. Altair ended his life in a crowded marketplace. The second target was Garnier de Naplouse, and he ran horrific experiments on kidnapped victims in Acre. Altair infiltrated his hospital and stopped his cruelty. The third target was Talal, a slaver in Jerusalem. The fourth target was William of Montferrat, Acre's regent, who sought military dominance. Altair struck him down in his fortress. The fifth target was Abul Nakud, the merchant king of Damascus, who poisoned his own guests during a party. Altair ended his reign. The sixth target was Majd ad-Din, a corrupt ruler in Jerusalem, who acted as judge, jury, and executioner. Altair killed him during a public execution. The seventh target was Jubair al-Hakim, a Damascus scholar, who burned books to erase history. Altair erased him from history. The eighth target was Sibrand, the paranoid leader of the Knights Teutonic, who feared death and the afterlife. Altair ended his life aboard his ship. Now, with each mission, Altair pieced together the Templars' plans and their connection to the Apple of Eden. Altair's final target was the Templar Grand Master himself, Robert de Sable. He tracked Robert to a funeral in Jerusalem, but it turned out to be a trap. The Robert that he confronted was actually Maria, one of his allies, posing to be a decoy. She revealed that Robert was in Arsuf, preparing to rally Crusaders and Saracens against the assassins. Altair rushed to Arsuf and fought his way to Robert. In a trial by combat overseen by King Richard, Altair defeated the Templar Grand Master, but Robert's final words changed everything. He revealed that Al-Mualim, Altair's own mentor, was using the apple to manipulate everybody, including Altair. Altair returned to Masyaf to find the Brotherhood in chaos. Al-Mualim had used the apple to control the assassins and the villagers. He fought his way to Al-Mualim and confronted him in the fortress. Al-Mualim tried to justify his actions, claiming he could bring peace by controlling humanity, but Altair saw it as tyranny and rejected the idea. In a pretty incredible battle, Altair defeated his former mentor. The apple activated, projecting a map of the world, showing the locations of other pieces of Eden. This revelation set the stage for the assassins' ongoing fight against the Templars. By the end of his journey, Altair was not the same man who arrogantly stormed into Solomon's temple at the start of the game. He grew into a wiser, more disciplined leader. The events of 1191 were just the beginning of his transformation into one of the greatest assassins in history. After taking down Al-Mualim and quelling a rebellion led by Abbas Sofyan, Altair stepped up as the Brotherhood's mentor in 1191. It was not an easy start, but Altair was determined to rebuild the assassins into something stronger. He wrote something called the Codex, which contained information about his life, the ongoing war between the assassins and Templars, the pieces of Eden, religions, and so much more. In fact, if you want to know a detailed breakdown of every page in this codex, then check out this video I made going over the codex that he wrote. Just 1 month after becoming mentor, Altair led a mission to Cyprus to deal with the Templars, who had retreated there under Armand Bouchard's command. It was here that Altair crossed paths with Maria Thorpe, a former Templar. At first, she was his prisoner, but their time together built trust and respect between them. The mission ended with Altair confronting Bouchard, but while they succeeded in defeating him, the Templars managed to hide their archive. Despite this setback, Altair and Maria returned to the Brotherhood, and their relationship deepened, eventually leading to their marriage. Over the years, Altair expanded the Assassin Brotherhood's influence, setting up new guilds across the world. He and Maria had 2 sons, Darim and Seth, and Altair continued his travels, even attempting to bring the assassins to Constantinople. Unfortunately, political unrest in the city prevented him from succeeding. In 1217, Altair, Maria and Darim embarked on a 10-year mission to Mongolia to assassinate Genghis Khan. Altair suspected that the Mongol leader was using a piece of Eden to fuel his conquest. Despite his advancing age, Altair played a pretty important role in the mission's success. However, this long campaign marked the beginning of a series of personal losses that would deeply affect him. When Altair returned to Masyaf in 1228, he found out that Abbas Sophian had seized control of the order through lies and manipulation. Abbas had Altair's son Seth murdered and blamed Malik all for the crime. In a devastating series of events, Altair was unable to prevent more tragedy, and his wife Maria was sadly killed during a confrontation with Abbas's forces. At this point, Altair was simply a broken and grieving man, and was forced into exile. During his years of isolation, Altair struggled with his sorrow and the burden of the Apple of Eden. He retreated to Alamut, where he studied the artifact and recorded his knowledge on special memory seals. In 1247, Altair returned to Masyaf as an old man, ready to take back the order. With the help of loyal assassins, including Malik's son Tazim, Altair overthrew Abbas peacefully. Using a hidden gun he had developed with the Apple's knowledge, Altair avoided unnecessary bloodshed. With Abbas Sophian finally gone, Altair reclaimed his position as mentor and set about restoring the Brotherhood to its former glory. He spent his later years focused on preserving the Order's future and built a library beneath Masyaf, filling it with books and the knowledge that he'd gathered from the Apple. Understanding the risks of centralizing power, he dispersed the Brotherhood across the globe, ensuring its survival even in the face of future threats. In 1257, with Masyaf under siege by the Mongols, Altair entrusted Niccolo and Maffeo Polo with his codex and 5 of his memory seals. After securing their escape, Altair locked himself and the Apple inside the library, and at the age of 92, Altair recorded his final memory on the 6th seal and peacefully passed away, leaving behind a lifetime of wisdom and sacrifice. I do hope people realize that Altair's impact on the Assassin Brotherhood was pretty big, and it deserves a lot more recognition. 50 years later, after the death of Altair, we now move on to the events happening within the Holy Roman Empire. The prologue of Assassin's Creed Unity takes us to the collapse of the Templar Order in France. On October 13, 1307, King Philip IV launched a massive crackdown, arresting Templars across the country. This marked a turning point in the struggle between the Templars and the Assassins. Caught in the chaos was Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the Templars. As his headquarters came under attack, Jacques de Molay spoke with his advisor, suspecting the Assassins were behind it. His advisor thought that the Assassins had been wiped out after the fall of Masyaf. He knew they had gone underground and were still a threat. As King Philip's forces raided the temple, assassins led by Thomas de Carnelian disguised themselves as mercenaries and joined the attack. In the confusion, de Molay ordered his advisor to hide 2 important artifacts, his codex and the Sword of Eden. Now, do not be confused with Altair's codex. These are 2 very different things. The advisor managed to hide the relics but was assassinated by Thomas de Carnelian before he could rescue de Molay. The arrest shattered the Templar presence in France. By 1312, Pope Clement V officially dissolved the order, handing their world to the Knights Hospitaller. Even in captivity, Jacques de Molay worked to protect the Templars' future. He sent 9 trusted men into hiding, each carrying important knowledge to ensure the order's survival in secret. On March 18, 1314, de Molay was burned at the stake. As he faced death, he cursed King Philip IV and Pope Clement V, vowing they would face judgment within the year. Now, to be fair, his words rang true. Both men died soon after. While Jacques de Molay's death marked the end of the Templars as a public power, his actions ensured their survival in the shadows, fueling the century-long battle between the Assassins and Templars. 162 years later, we finally entered the Renaissance period. But before we can discuss the games and Ezio, who we all know about, we need to dive into the first media corresponding to this time period, and that is Assassin's Creed Lineage. Now, Lineage sets the stage for the legendary tale of the Auditore family by introducing us to Giovanni Auditore, Ezio's father and a skilled assassin, uncovering a dangerous conspiracy orchestrated by Rodrigo Borgia to destabilize Italy and overthrow the powerful Medici dynasty. Giovanni's mission takes him from Florence to Milan, where he tries to prevent the assassination of Duke Galeazzo Maria Sforza during a public mass. Though he does fight valiantly, the Duke is killed, and Giovanni uncovers Venetian coins on one of the assailants, hinting at a broader conspiracy. This clue leads him to Venice, where he intercepts a courier and receives an encrypted letter linking the plot to Rodrigo Borgia and the papacy. In Rome, Giovanni follows Rodrigo to the Vatican, where he overhears plans to undermine Lorenzo de' Medici's authority. Rodrigo attempts to recruit Giovanni to the Templar cause, but Giovanni refuses, resulting in a deadly ambush. Though wounded, Giovanni survives and returns to Florence, warning Lorenzo of the looming threat. Back in Florence, Giovanni realizes the danger extends to his family and the Medici. Despite his efforts, Rodrigo and his Templar allies remain a step ahead, plotting to eliminate him. Giovanni's bravery and dedication to the Assassin's Creed, even in the face of overwhelming odds, sets the foundation for the next chapter in the Auditore saga, where his son Ezio Auditore will rise to avenge his family and fight for justice. And so our timeline officially highlights the legendary saga of Ezio Auditore da Firenze. Continuing on from the events of Assassin's Creed Lineage, in the same year that the movie ended, Ezio's life falls apart. His father is framed for treason by Uberto Alberti, a trusted family friend who is secretly working for the Templars. Ezio is powerless to stop the public execution of his father and brothers. Before his death, Giovanni gives Ezio instructions to find a hidden room inside their home. Inside, Ezio discovers his father's assassin robes and weapons, uncovering his family's connection to the Brotherhood. With his mother and sister in tow, Ezio escapes from Florence and finds refuge at his uncle Mario's villa in Monteriggioni. Mario reveals the family's assassin heritage and begins training Ezio, teaching him the skills of combat, stealth and investigation. Driven by grief and anger, Ezio commits to avenging his family and unraveling the conspiracy behind the betrayal. His journey in Assassin's Creed 2 takes him to Florence, San Gimignano, Forli, Venice and other places, where he uncovers a massive Templar conspiracy led by Rodrigo Borgia, the Grand Master of the Italian Templars. Along the way, Ezio builds a network of allies who become vital to his mission. Ezio befriends Leonardo da Vinci, who deciphers pages from Altair's codex. Remember, the same codex that Altair had written right after his battle against Al-Mualim. I mentioned how that the codex contained a lot of important information, and one of these things mentioned is improving the assassin arsenal. This codex helps Ezio upgrade his weapons and learn new assassin techniques. Other allies like Niccolo Machiavelli and Caterina Sforza also support Ezio, helping him grow into a capable leader and skilled assassin. In 1488, Ezio tracks down Rodrigo Borgia to Venice. Rodrigo has acquired a powerful artifact called the Apple of Eden, which he believes will lead him to the Vault, a place rumored to hold powerful secrets and more pieces of Eden. Rodrigo thinks he is the prophet, designed to open the vault. Ezio confronts Rodrigo in a pretty entertaining fight. Though Ezio initially gains the upper hand, Rodrigo's guards arrive to tip the fight in his favor. However, Ezio's allies show up just in time to turn the tide. Rodrigo escapes, leaving the apple behind. Afterward, Ezio's allies soon reveal that they are members of the Assassin Brotherhood, and officially induct him as an assassin. They believe Ezio, not Rodrigo, is the true prophet, destined to lead the assassins to the vault. In 1488, after getting his hands on the Apple of Eden, Ezio and his allies decided to stash it with Caterina Sforza in Forli for safekeeping. But things go sideways when the Orsi brothers, who are mercenaries hired by the Templars, attack the city. They kidnap Caterina's kids and use the chaos to steal the apple. Ezio steps in, saving the children and killing Cecco Orsi, but not before getting injured. To make things worse, the apple is snatched by a mysterious monk with a missing finger, later revealed to be Girolamo Savonarola. Caterina helps Ezio recover, and he sets off to track down the monk, determined to get back the Apple of Eden before the Templars use it for their schemes. This is where things start to get a little confusing in terms of the timeline. Suddenly, we've jumped up many years, and Ezio's work as an assassin goes beyond what we are currently doing in Assassin's Creed 2. He gets word that the assassins in Spain are being targeted by the Inquisition, led by Thomas de Torquemada. With Rodrigo Borgia pulling strings behind the scenes, Ezio heads off to Spain. He frees captured assassins, and stops Templar plans to delay Christopher Columbus' westward voyage. It's a turning point for Ezio. He's no longer avenging his family, he's fighting for the Brotherhood, and seeing how deep the Templar influence run across Europe. But before we can continue on with Ezio Auditore, we need to take a detour and cover the Assassin's Creed movie, which funnily enough takes place in the same year and the same country that Ezio Auditore is currently in. However, what's quite disappointing is that the movie does not even mention or feature Ezio, so that's a bit annoying, I guess. But regardless, this movie is canon, and so let's very briefly talk about it. I say briefly because, it's not a really interesting movie in the slightest, if I'm being honest. Now, the historical portion of the Assassin's Creed movie focuses on Aguilar de Nerja, a Spanish assassin during the Granada War in 1492. There is a lot of modern day stuff in this movie, but we'll get onto that when I discuss the modern day timeline later in the video. Anyway, Aguilar is initiated into the Assassin Brotherhood during a time of political upheaval and Templar scheming. His first mission is to protect Prince Ahmed of Granada, the son of Sultan Mohammed XII from the Knights Templars, led by Grand Inquisitor Thomas de Torquemada. the Templars seek the Apple of Eden. To coerce the Sultan into surrendering both Granada and the Apple, the Templars kidnap Prince Ahmed. Aguilar and his partner Maria are deployed to rescue the prince. They intercept the Templars during the handoff, but despite their efforts, they are overpowered by Thomas de Torquemada's enforcer Ojeda and taken captive. Aguilar and Maria are sentenced to execution by burning, but the assassins manage to escape in dramatic fashion, leaping from the execution's platform in a daring leap of faith. During a mission after, Aguilar and Maria ambush a meeting between Sultan Mohammed and Torquemada. Though they retrieve the apple, Maria sacrifices herself to ensure the mission's success. Aguilar kills Ojeda and escapes using another leap of faith. The apple is then entrusted to Christopher Colombo, or rather known as Christopher Columbus, who promises to take it to his grave. We now go back to Assassin's Creed 2, and Ezio is back in Italy. He shifts his focus to Girolamo Savonarola, the monk who took the apple. By 1497, Savonarola has seized control of Florence, using the apple to manipulate people and enforce his fanatical rule. Ezio teams up with Niccolo Machiavelli and other allies to chip away at Savonarola's power by taking out key supporters one by one. This sparks a rebellion, leading to Savonarola's capture. During the monk's public execution, Ezio shows mercy, sparing him from the pain of burning alive, but instead stabs him in the face. So I guess that's better, right? Before leaving Florence, Ezio gives a heartfelt speech, urging the people to think for themselves and not blindly follow any ruler. With Savonarola defeated, Ezio and his allies regroup at Monteriggioni 1 year later to put together the Codex pages. The completed Codex reveals a map of the world and pinpoints the location of the vault beneath the Vatican. It also confirms their suspicion that Rodrigo Borgia became Pope Alexander VI to access the vault, which requires both the apple and the papal staff. Ezio prepares for his biggest mission yet, confronting Rodrigo in Rome. That same year, Ezio sneaks into the Vatican to face Rodrigo, who's now wielding the papal staff. A brutal fight breaks out, with Rodrigo using the staff's power and the apple to try and overpower Ezio. Rodrigo even stabs Ezio, leaving him for dead, but Ezio survives thanks to the armor of Altair. Recovering swiftly, Ezio follows Rodrigo into the vault. There, Rodrigo reveals his ultimate goal, to use the vault's secrets to become godlike. Ezio defeats him but spares his life, showing that he's moved past revenge, which by the way I think is stupid. He should have totally killed him. Otherwise, the events of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, the game that came after Assassin's Creed 2, would be a lot different. Anyway, inside the vault, Ezio encounters a hologram of Minerva. Remember her? She was one of the Isu, a powerful species that created humanity. Minerva explains how her people were wiped out by disaster and warns of a similar event in the modern world. Strangely, she's not speaking to Ezio Auditore here, but to somebody called Desmond, who we'll go over a lot more later on during the modern day segments. Ezio is confused and full of questions, leaving the vault with a deeper understanding of his role and a sense of unfinished business. And right there is the ending of Assassin's Creed 2. The following game, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, is a direct continuation of Assassin's Creed 2. In fact, this game started at one point to be a DLC for that game, but was instead turned into a mainline entry. Anyway, after Ezio left the vault beneath the Vatican, he found Rodrigo Borgia gone and the Staff of Eden lost. His uncle Mario arrived just in time to help him escape, and the two left the city with the Apple of Eden. Ezio thought about getting rid of the apple, but Mario convinced him to hold onto it for safekeeping. Back at Monteriggioni, Ezio hoped his fighting days were behind him, but in the year 1500, Cesare Borgia, the son of Rodrigo Borgia, launched a brutal attack on the city. During the siege, Uncle Mario was killed, Caterina Sforza was captured, and the apple fell into Cesare's hands. At this point, Ezio was injured and outnumbered, but he managed to escape with the surviving people through a hidden passage. Ezio swore to bring down the Borgia because of his uncle, his home, and everything that they had taken. Arriving in Rome, Ezio found the city crumbling under the Borgia's control. With Niccolo Machiavelli's encouragement, he focused on uniting the oppressed citizens and rebuilding the Brotherhood. Ezio recruited new apprentices, took down Borgia captains, and restored parts of the city. Alongside allies like Bartolomeu, Claudia, and La Volpe, he began to chip away at the Borgia's power slowly but surely. He also uncovered a secret cult, the followers of Romulus, and they were being used by the Borgia to spread fear. Ezio explored their lairs and found scrolls and keys connected to the legendary armor Brutus. From 1501 to 1503, Ezio kept the pressure on the Borgia by freeing Caterina Sforza from Castel Sant'Angelo and taking out some pretty important allies that Cesare Borgia had. He disrupted their finances and military support while strengthening the Brotherhood. Claudia, who is Ezio's sister, even defended Rosa in Fior, which was the base of the courtesans in Rome, which later became the city's most popular brothel. This earned Claudia her place among the assassins. At this point, Cesare's support is crumbling, and Ezio chased both him and Rodrigo Borgia. During a confrontation, Rodrigo Borgia tried to poison his own son, but ended up being killed by Cesare instead. That's why I said earlier it was pointless for Ezio to let Rodrigo live because, yeah, He died shortly after to his very own son. Ezio then recovered the Apple of Eden and used his power to destroy what was left of Cesare's influence in Rome. Cesare was then captured and sent to Spain, leaving the Brotherhood in control of the city. At this point, Ezio then hid the Apple of Eden in a vault beneath the Colosseum, ensuring it would stay safe. This is where the story of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood falls short, because for some reason the game just randomly skips many years without context in the game. In 1506, 3 years after defeating the Borgia in Rome, Ezio finds out that Cesare Borgia has escaped from his imprisonment in Spain. Determined to stop him, Ezio heads to Leonardo da Vinci's workshop in Rome to ask for help in arranging a ship to leave Italy. Leonardo agrees, but first asks Ezio to bring back his apprentice Salai, who is at La Volpe Adamantata. Ezio finds Salai gambling and convinces him to return, but on the way back, they're ambushed by a mysterious group called the Hermeticists. After fighting them off, the pair returns to the workshop, only to find it destroyed and Leonardo da Vinci missing. Clues point to the Hermeticists kidnapping Leonardo because of his knowledge of the Temple of Pythagoras. A message left behind reveals that 5 of Leonardo's paintings, lost during the siege of Monteriggioni, hold the key to the temple's location. Ezio tracks down the paintings and recovers them, and with all 5 paintings, Ezio finds a map leading to the Temple of Pythagoras. He rescues Leonardo, kills the leader of the Hermeticists, and the 2 of them explore the temple. Inside, they solve puzzles and discover mysterious coordinates. Leonardo simply dismisses them, but Ezio knows that they mean something bigger. Something much bigger, not meant for their very own eyes. So they simply leave the vault, and with their mission completed, they prepare to go after Cesare Borgia in Spain. After many years of searching for Cesare Borgia, their final showdown came during the siege of Vienna in 1507, in which Ezio finally tracked him down. After a fierce battle, Ezio defeated Cesare Borgia and tossed him off a wall to his death. By the end of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Ezio had transformed from a man fueled by revenge into a wise and respected leader, cementing his place as one of the Brotherhood's greatest mentors, and for Ezio it was a job well done. The story of Ezio Auditore is almost coming to an end, and now we'll discuss the final game of the Ezio trilogy, and that is Assassin's Creed Revelations. We're now in 1511, and Ezio heads to Masyaf, hoping to find the library of Altair that was apparently under Masyaf. If you remember when I was talking about Altair, I mentioned how he sealed himself away in the library and died of old age. Well, hundreds of years later, it's Ezio's time to find it. However, when Ezio got there, the place was in ruins and crawling with Byzantine Templars. He was ambushed and captured by their leader Leandros, who planned to execute him. But Ezio, being Ezio, he turned the tables, escaped, got his weapons back, and chased Leandros down a narrow cliffside. After taking him out, Ezio found Niccolo Polo's journal, which hinted at the existence of the Masyaf keys, artifacts needed to open Altair's library. From there, Ezio sailed to Constantinople, where the Templars were also hunting for the keys. He met Yusuf Tazim, the head of the local assassins, who brought him up to speed on the city's problems. The Templars, working with the remnants of the Byzantine Empire, were trying to take over, while the Ottomans were caught in a messy power struggle between Sultan Bayezid II and his son Selim. While searching for the keys, Ezio met Sofia Sartor, a bookshop owner and historian. She helped him track down Niccolo Polo's hidden books, which pointed to where the keys were hidden. With Sofia's continued help, he located these keys, staying one step ahead of the Templars. During all of this, Ezio recruited new assassins. He worked to strengthen the Brotherhood, and uncovered a traitor in their ranks. This led to the downfall of Vali Seltrade, a former assassin who had turned to the Templars, securing the Brotherhood's position in Constantinople. Ezio also got involved in some Ottoman politics. He saved Prince Suleiman from an assassination attempt led by a Byzantine Templar trying to seize power, and he did do a lot more unimportant things. Back in Constantinople, Ezio found out that Prince Ahmed had captured Sofia. This led to a dramatic chase to the countryside, where Ezio finally caught up with Prince Ahmed. But before Ezio could deal with him, Selim, the new Sultan, showed up, killed his brother, and told Ezio to leave the city. So with no choice, Ezio left Constantinople with Sofia and headed to Masyaf. At Masyaf, Ezio used the keys to unlock Altair's library. Inside, he did not find books or knowledge. He found the skeleton of Altair and the powerful lesson about the dangers of obsession. Ezio chooses to leave Altair's Apple of Eden untouched, and finally realized his journey as an assassin had come to an end. He even spoke to his future ancestor Desmond Miles, the observer of his memories, urging him to find the answers that neither he nor Altair could. I'll go more on Desmond later on. Anyway, with all of that said, Ezio stepped away from the life of an assassin, ready to move on, and thankfully he lived a peaceful life with no real problems. But, big but. Before we can finally wrap up the story of Ezio Auditore, we have one more tale to tell. In 1524, Ezio had left the assassin life behind and settled down in Tuscany with his wife Sophia and their kids Marcello and Flavia. He spent his days peacefully working in the vineyard and enjoying time with his family. It was a simple life, far removed from the battles and chaos of his past. One day, while Sophia and Marcello were visiting Ezio's sister Claudia, Ezio was looking after Flavia when he spotted a stranger in a cloak talking to her. Concerned, he rushed over, only to find out that stranger was Xiao Jun, an assassin from China. She had travelled a long way from China just to ask for his help in saving her brotherhood, but Ezio turned her down, explaining that his days as an assassin were over and his focus was now on protecting his family. Still, Sophia, Ezio's wife, seeing how far Xiao Jun had come, invited her to stay the night. The next morning, Ezio found Xiao Jun reading his personal writings, and he wasn't happy about this. He told her to get the fuck out of here, but she begged him to share his knowledge, saying she only wanted to help him learn about how to rebuild her brotherhood. Ezio eventually agreed, but made it clear that he did not want to put his family at risk. He took her to Florence, showing her moments from his past, like the Palazzo della Signora, where some of his family members were killed. He tried to teach her about the sacrifices that come with being an assassin. The lessons were interrupted when imperial soldiers sent by the Yajing emperor ambushed them. Xiao Jun explained that these soldiers were after her for defying the emperor. Ezio and Xiao Jun fought them off, and realizing the danger to his family, Ezio sent Sophia and the kids to Machiavelli's home for safety. He and Xiao Jun stayed behind, ready for another attack. When the soldiers returned, the two fought bravely, with Ezio even saving Xiao Jun from a cannon blast. After taking out their enemies, Ezio gave Xiao Jun a small box, telling her to open it only if she ever felt lost. She thanked Ezio and left. Not long after, Ezio joined Sophia and Flavia on a trip to Florence. While they shopped, he sat on a bench, reflecting on his life. A young man briefly sat next to him, offering a few words of advice before walking away. As Ezio watched his family from afar, he smiled one last time and passed away peacefully at the age of 65, leaving behind a letter for Sophia, a final farewell to his life full of love, loss and meaning. Rest in peace, Ezio Auditore. And so our journey with Ezio has reached this pretty lengthy end. Ah man, what a story, right? Following Assassin's Creed Embers, which featured Xiao Jun, this right here is Xiao Jun's actual game. It's not a mainline game, which is a shame, but it's a 2.5D side-scroller. So after the events with Ezio in Italy, Xiao Jun returned to China in 1526. Her mission was to dismantle the 8 Tigers, who are Templars controlling China, and rebuild the Assassin Brotherhood. By 1532, Xiao Jun stops the leader of the 8 Tigers, Zhang Yong's plan to let the Mongols invade, so she kills him, and learns that the box that Ezio gave her in Embers, which is the precursor box, has suddenly disappeared. Accepting the loss of the box, Xiao Jun chooses to stay and rebuild the Brotherhood instead of going after the artifact. Years later, as mentor of the Chinese assassins, she secures her legacy by orchestrating the assassination of the Jiajing Emperor. As of right now, this game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, has not been released, nor has there been anything important for the timeline to talk about. So just know that the year 1579 is the year that our protagonists Naoe and Yasuke start their journey. I just hope it's a memorable story. Ubisoft don't disappoint. Famous last words. Next up in the timeline, we finally make it to the golden age of piracy, and our journey revolves around Edward Kenway, a pirate turned assassin, and also the father of Haytham Kenway, and the grandfather of Connor from Assassin's Creed 3. Edward's story kicks off after a shipwreck leaves him stranded on an island with an assassin. Instead of teaming up, Edward, being the pirate he is, kills the guy. He takes his gear and pretends to be him to score a reward in Havana. While he's at Havana, he finds out about the Templars and their search for the Observatory, which is a precursor site that can track anybody using a drop of their blood. Things don't go as planned. Edward gets exposed for being a fake assassin. He gets betrayed and even thrown into jail. He escapes with a former slave, Adewale, and together they steal a ship that they named the Jackdaw, kicking off their pirate adventure. Edward wastes no time building his reputation. He teams up with big names like Blackbeard and Benjamin Hornigold, and helps him set up a pirate republic in Nassau. He also meets the famous James Kidd, who later reveals that she's actually Mary Read. But things go south fast. Greed, infighting, and the Royal Navy's arrival bring the Republic down. Even with all this chaos, Edward stays focused on finding Bartholomew Roberts, a sage who's the key to unlocking the observatory. Oh, and also a big payday. If you remember back when I spoke about the Isu, I mentioned sages. Sages are people who possess memories of an ancient race called the Isu that are revealed to them over time, and our friend Bartholomew Roberts, or kind of friend, is one of them. Edward's search for Roberts lead him to Tulum, where he crosses paths with the assassins. At first, he couldn't care less about their cause, but losing friends and seeing the darker side of piracy forces him to rethink his choices. When Mary Reed and Anne Bonny are captured, Edward tries to save them, but Mary tragically dies after childbirth. Her death hits Edward quite hard, making him question everything. Looking to turn things around, Edward joins forces with the assassins. He helps them take on the Templars and the Spanish, taking out major people like Woodes Rogers, and eventually he does take down Bartholomew Roberts, who betrayed him by whacking him over the head with a crystal skull, which is another Isu artifact in the observatory. All of this leads to one big showdown, where Edward kills Governor Torres and shuts down the observatory site to stop anybody from misusing it. After learning of his wife's death, Edward decides it's finally time to leave piracy behind. He hands over the Jackdaw and his estate in Inagua to the assassins, ensuring their fight continues. In 1722, he reunites with his daughter Jennifer Scott and sails back to England to start over. And that's the end of Assassin's Creed Black Flag. But if you continue to wait after the credits, you'll realize that Edward remarries and has a son, and that son is Haytham Kenway, setting the stage for even more Assassin's Creed stories. But before we dive into Assassin's Creed Rogue, we need to explore the story of Edward's friend Adewale. So, Adewale, now a seasoned assassin. He has his own game. Well, it's not really a game, it's more of a spin-off or a DLC, but regardless, it's important for the timeline. So the game starts off with Adewale chasing Templar activity in the Caribbean, but a storm wrecks his ship, and he ends up stranded near Haiti. In Port-au-Prince, he discovers the Templars are working with Bastien Joseph, a brothel owner secretly helping the Maroons, who are a group of escaped slaves fighting for freedom. Even though Adewale's main duty is to the Assassin Brotherhood, he can't ignore what's happening. He decides to join the Maroons and take on the slave trade. Adewale wastes no time proving himself. He hijacks a ship, the Experto Crede, to disrupt the slave trade and help the Maroons. Along the way, he uncovers a Templar plot led by Governor Pierre de Fayette. Now, de Fayette's plans to gather geographical data through a scientific expedition and sell it for military power is pretty bad. So Adewale steps in, swapping the enslaved workers with educated Maroons and sabotaging their whole operation, dealing a solid blow to the Templars. As Adewale's raids ramp up, tensions grow within the Maroons. Bastien warns him that pushing too hard will only lead to harsher punishment for the enslaved people. Ignoring her advice, Adewale launches another raid, only to witness a Templar frigate destroy a defenseless slave ship to stop its passengers from escaping. Adewale manages to save a few people, but most perish when the ship sinks. The event deeply shakes him and strengthens his resolve to take down the cruel and heartless de Fayette. Adewale decides to assassinate him, but keep Bastien's words in mind. It's about justice, not revenge. He storms the governor's mansion, fights his way through the city, and corners de Fayette. The unrepentant governor mocks enslaved people as incapable of freedom, but Adewale counters, pointing out how neither the slaves nor the overseers tried to save him. With that, Adewale ends de Fayette's reign, sending a strong message to the Templars. Afterward, Adewale returns to Bastien and promises to leave Port-au-Prince. But his experiences have changed him. He vows to dedicate his life to helping the oppressed, beyond just serving the Assassin Brotherhood. His time in Haiti was not a simple mission, it's a turning point that solidifies his sense of justice and purpose. This is a game where I salute Ubisoft for portraying such a controversial and dark moment in history, and it is certainly portrayed quite well, so kudos to them for that. This is where the timeline, in my opinion, gets pretty messy. The events of the next 3 games all seem to overlap, happening around the same time, which makes it a bit tricky to follow, but regardless, I'll try my best to ease some confusion. So let's start off with Assassin's Creed Rogue, which is set in 1752, just 15 years after the events of Freedom Cry. In Assassin's Creed Rogue, we follow Shay Patrick Cormac on a wild ride filled with betrayal, tough choices, and a huge shift in loyalty. More on that very soon. Shay starts off as a young assassin under Achilles Davenport's guidance. He's eager to prove himself, but things get rocky fast. On a mission to Port Mania with fellow assassins Liam O'Brien and De La Verendaya, they're ambushed by the British Navy. Shay takes charge, claiming a British ship and naming it the Morrigan. It's his first ship into a larger adventure, but there's tension brewing. Shay feels like Achilles does not fully trust or respect him, and it's starting to show. Achilles gives Shay and Liam a major mission: recover 2 powerful Isu artifacts, the Precursor Box, which if you recall was the box Xiaojun managed to lose in Chronicles China, and also the Voynich manuscript. Their search takes them to Lawrence Washington, a dying Templar. Shay assassinates him and gets the box, but this mission shakes him. The things that the assassins are messing with, well, they're dangerous. Shay starts questioning whether they're actually doing more harm than good. And then comes Lisbon. And this is where everything changes. Achilles sends Shay to retrieve a piece of Eden in Lisbon, Portugal. When Shay takes the artifact, it triggers a massive earthquake that kills thousands of innocent lives. Thousands. Devastated and furious, Shay confronts Achilles, accusing him of playing with powers they don't understand. But the assassins dismiss him. At this point, Shay is feeling betrayed and takes the Voynich manuscript and leaves, determined to stop them from causing another disaster. His decision does not go over well. He's shot and left for dead by his fellow assassins. Now here's where things take a turn. Shay is rescued by Templar Colonel George Monroe, who nurses him back to health. Disillusioned with the assassins, Shay starts to see the Templars' perspective. Monroe shows him a different side to the Templars: order, control, and genuine care for the people. Shay fights back against criminal gangs in New York, reclaims the Morrigan, and slowly starts to embrace the Templar cause. By 1758, Shay is fully committed to the Templars, making him at that point the first Templar protagonist in a mainline game. Haytham Kenway officially brings him into the order, and together they start dismantling the colonial brotherhood one by one. Shay confronts people who were once his closest allies, like Adewale and Hope Jensen. These moments are intense. Killing Hope is especially tough. She calls him out, saying he's wasted his potential by turning on the assassins. It's pretty clear her words stuck with him. The ending of Shay's journey happens in the Arctic. Achilles and Liam are searching for another Isu temple, and Shay, along with Haytham, who I briefly said was the son of Edward Kenway, is determined to stop them. Things go sideways pretty fast. Another earthquake is triggered, and Shay ends up in a brutal fight with Liam. Liam's final words cut deep. He accuses Shay of betraying everything they believed in. Shay, on the other hand, insists he did it to save lives. When it's Achilles' turn, Haytham wants to kill him, but Shay steps in. He convinces Haytham to spare Achilles, arguing that he's no longer a threat. Instead, Haytham cripples Achilles, making sure he'll never fight again. This moment solidifies Shay's position as a Templar. I would have said he's cold, but instead he's calculated, strategic, and willing to make hard decisions. But Shay's story does not end in the Americas. By 1776, he's in Paris hunting the precursor box. The French assassins have it, and Shay infiltrates a meeting at the Palace of Versailles. He assassinates the father of one of our future protagonists, Charles Dorian, taking the box. Before dying, Charles points out that the assassin revolution has undone the Templars' plans in the New World. But you see, with Shay, he's not phased. He promises that the Templars will adapt and find a new way to restore balance. And that brings us to the end of Assassin's Creed Rogue. The story of this game is quite messy, but it's also morally grey and incredibly unique. And now we move on to Assassin's Creed 3, which in my opinion is probably the most difficult to explain because of the amount of characters, the storylines and ideas that are explored in either the game before or the game after. The game kicks off with Haytham Kenway, who we saw in the previous game, but this time it's shortly after the events of what had happened. Haytham assassinates a man named Miko during a play at the London Theatre Royal and steals a medallion tied to the first civilization. This medallion is supposed to unlock a mysterious storehouse with unimaginable power. With this, Haytham heads to the American colonies aboard the Providence. On the way, he deals with a mutiny in classic Haytham fashion, brutally efficient. Once in Boston, Haytham builds a crew of loyal allies, including Charles Lee, William Johnson, Thomas Hickey, Benjamin Church, and Jonathan Pitcairn. Together, they take on all kinds of missions, and even free Kahaka tribe's people. Among them is Ezio, who reluctantly joins Haytham's mission after he promises to kill General Edward Braddock, a man who wronged their people. Their relationship grows deeper, and after Braddock is dead, Haytham and Ezio discover the Grand Temple. Remember this temple, it will be important when I discuss the modern day. But here's the twist, the medallion does not work. Oh, and surprise, Haytham is not an assassin, he's a Templar. Fast forward a few years and we meet Radan Hagedon, who is Haytham and Zio's son. Life did not start easy for him. As a child, he watches Charles Lee, the Templar who was under Haytham's command, visit his village only for tragedy to follow. His home is burned, and his mother dies in the fire. This cements Connor's hatred for Charles Lee, and his drive to seek justice. Years later, a village elder shows Connor a crystal sphere that connects him to Juno, the Isu that wanted to take over the world. She warns him that his people are in danger and tells him to seek out Achilles Davenport, a retired assassin for training. Connor convinces the grumpy old man to help, and under Achilles' mentorship, he takes the name Connor to blend into colonial society. With his assassin training complete, Connor jumps headfirst into the Revolutionary War. His first big targets are William Johnson, who's trying to buy his people's land, and John Pitcairn, leading the British at Bunker Hill. Both meet their end thanks to Connor. Now things heat up when Connor uncovers a plot by Thomas Hickey to assassinate George Washington. In a twist, Connor is framed, jailed and nearly hanged. But in a pretty cool escape, he not only saves himself, but he also stops Hickey just in time to save Washington's life. Connor's hunt for the Templars bring him face to face with his father Haytham. The two strike an uneasy truce to take down Benjamin Church, a traitor to both their factions. Their mission takes them to the Caribbean, where they corner and kill Church. But the alliance falls apart when Connor discovers that Washington has ordered native tribes, including his own, to be removed from their land. Feeling betrayed by both Haytham and Washington, Connor returns to protect his village. In a heart-wrenching moment, he's forced to kill his childhood friend who was manipulated by Charles Lee. This tragedy fuels Connor's determination to take down the Templar Order, starting with Haytham first and then Charles Lee. Connor's path leads him to New York and a dramatic infiltration of Fort George. But you see, things don't go as planned. Haytham ambushes Connor, giving Charles Lee time to escape. The father and son start fighting in one of the franchise's most memorable scenes, with Connor ultimately killing Hatham, a tragic but necessary moment. Finally, Connor tracks Lee to a burning shipyard and chases him to a tavern. In one of the game's most powerful scenes, the two share a drink before Connor quietly stabs Lee, ending his life and reclaiming the medallion. Connor buries it in the grave of Achilles' son, ensuring it stays hidden. After the dust settles, Connor returns to his village, only to find his people displaced by the new American government. He witnesses the revolution's hypocrisy as slavery continues right alongside the celebrations of freedom. Now, Connor at this point is pretty disheartened, but he's also resolute. So he burns the Templar portraits in the Davenport Manor, closing the chapter on his fight against the Order. Now, there is a DLC named The Tyranny of King Washington, but that's literally not part of the real timeline. In fact, it's an alternate reality DLC, so there is no point in talking about it. But if you do want to know about it though, I did make a video ranking every DLC, and I went over The Tyranny of King Washington quite in depth over there, so check that video out if you have not. Anyway, after the story of Assassin's Creed 3, Connor focused on rebuilding the Colonial Brotherhood and bringing in new recruits. Connor even married a native woman from a nearby tribe, and they had 3 children, including a daughter whose name I can't pronounce, but I think it's Yonehiode or something like that. Anyway, in 1796, while teaching her to hunt, Connor's daughter fell and got hurt. During this chaos, something incredible happened. She somehow connected with an eagle and used it to warn Connor about a wolf sneaking up on him. This showed Connor that his daughter had extraordinary abilities and decided to start training her. By 1804, Connor was still dedicated to the Brotherhood. Haitian assassin ezio came to him for guidance, seeking help to prepare for the assassination of a tyrant who had risen to power after the Haitian Revolution. Even years later, Connor was still a pretty important mentor and leader in the fight for freedom. For this one, we need to go back to 1765, which yes, it defeats the whole purpose of the chronological order thing going on, but the only way for this to be easy to follow is by talking about Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation after Assassin's Creed 3, even though some parts of Liberation happened during Assassin's Creed 3. Anyway, in Liberation, we follow Aveline de Grand Prix, the first female assassin protagonist. The story begins with Aveline uncovering a secret alliance between French governor and Templar Raphael Joaquin de Ferrer. After assassinating the French governor, Aveline learns of Baptiste, a rogue assassin posing as the infamous Francois Macandal to control smuggling in the bayou. Baptiste's plan is to draw out Aveline's mentor Agathe, but you see, Aveline is not fooled. She eliminates Baptiste and ends his scheme. The Templars' involvement in the slave trade becomes Aveline's next focus. Spanish governor Antonio de Ulloa sets up a covert operation, smuggling slaves to a worksite in Chichen Itza. Aveline spares his life in exchange for vital information, defying Agathe's direct orders and earning his distrust. Aveline then disguises as a slave and infiltrates Chichen Itza, discovering a first civilization artifact known as the Prophecy Disc. She even confronts de Ferrer, killing him and liberating the enslaved. Aveline then returns to New Orleans and investigates the rising tensions in the bayou and discovers Vasquez, a Templar using Spanish soldiers to gain control. After spooking his men with voodoo tricks, she kills Vasquez but learns that he was not the true mastermind. Aveline's journey then takes her to the frontier, where she teams up with our previous protagonist Connor Kenway to hunt down Officer Davidson, only to find that he is George, a slave that she had once helped escape. His revelation leads her to the real threat, and that threat was her stepmother Madeleine. Aveline confronts Madeleine, who admits that she's been shaping Aveline's life to recruit her into the Templars. She tells her to go take out Agathe only for him to end his own life, so I guess it worked, kind of. Anyway, Aveline pretends to join the Templars and uses this as an opportunity to strike. She eliminates the Templars, kills her stepmother Madeleine, and reclaims the Prophecy Disc, unlocking a holographic message detailing the rise of Eve during the Isu Human War. And now we finally meet back to Assassin's Creed Unity, but this time we are past the prologue. Now our protagonist is named Arno, and his story truly kicks off at the Palace of Versailles, where his life takes a sharp turn. As a young boy, he accompanies his father Charles to a meeting, only to end up befriending Elise, a mischievous girl who dares him to steal an apple. What starts off as a fun little game turns pretty dark when Arno stumbles upon his father's lifeless body, assassinated during the chaos. If you remember when I was talking about Assassin's Creed Rogue, I did say Jade would kill the father of a future protagonist, and that is this instance right here. As years go by, Elise's father, Francois Delacere, steps in to raise Arno as his own, creating a bond that ties Arno and Elise together. A bond that's equal parts love story and a complicated rivalry. Fast forward to adulthood and Arno's rebellious streak hasn't gone anywhere. He's charming but reckless, spending his days gambling and drinking in Versailles. But you see, in 1789, tragedy strikes again, when Francois Delacere is murdered during a political meeting. Arno is wrongfully blamed for the crime and finds himself locked up in the infamous Bastille. While imprisoned, Arno meets Pierre Bellic, a seasoned assassin who drops a bombshell. Arno's real father was part of the Assassin Brotherhood. Bellic trains him, and when Araya gives him a chance to escape, Arno dives headfirst into the Brotherhood, determined to uncover the truth about Francois' murder and take down the Templars. Now, it is a bit of a shame that he doesn't want to learn about his father's death, but instead he focuses on Francois' death, which I think is a bit of wasted potential. But I guess we move. As Arno climbs the ranks, he learns about Francois Damas Germain, a Templar sage using the chaos of the French Revolution to reshape his order. Along the way, Arno reunites with Elise, who is now a fully fledged Templar, hunting down her father's killers. Their relationship becomes a mix of love, betrayal, and uneasy alliances, as they work together to stop Germain's plans, even though they stand on opposite sides of the Assassin-Templar conflict. Arno's dedication to the Brotherhood wavers, as he clashes with its strict rules and hierarchy. His rogue actions and personal vendettas get him expelled, leaving him bitter and lost. He retreats to Versailles, where he drowns his guilt and heartbreak in alcohol. It's Elise who pulls him out of this slump, convincing him to return to Paris. Together, they dismantle Germain's network, leading to a final showdown at the temple in 1794. In the temple's crypts, Arno and Elise face off against Germain, who is wielding the powerful Sword of Eden. The battle is pretty rough, but it all goes horribly wrong. Elise's relentless drive for revenge pushes her into a deadly explosion caused by the unstable sword. Arno is left shattered, cradling her lifeless body as he finishes off Germain and recovers the now depowered artifact. As Arno carries Elise out of the temple, he reflects on the high cost of his mission. Francois Thomas Germain's vision for Templar domination has been crushed, but at the price of the one person Arno cared about the most. The story of the Dead King's DLC for Assassin's Creed Unity kicks off right where we left off at the end of Unity. So after losing Elise, Arno was in a rough place, drowning in grief and guilt. He retreated to Franciade, which is now the modern day Saint Denis, spending his days drinking his sorrows away in a dingy tavern. On 3rd of August 1794, his brooding was interrupted by none other than Marquis de Sade. He had a deal for him. Find a manuscript hidden in the royal tomb of Louis IX under the Basilica of Saint Denis, and in return Arno would get a ticket out of France and onto a ship bound for Egypt. With nothing better to do, Arno begrudgingly agreed. The search of the manuscript led Arno deep into the eerie necropolis beneath the Basilica, but instead of the manuscript, he stumbled upon something bigger, crypt raiders led by Captain Philip Rose, who were working for Napoleon Bonaparte. Now these guys weren't just after loot, they were hunting for an ancient Isu temple, rumored to hold a powerful artifact. While exploring the tunnels, Arno crossed paths with a young thief named Leon. The kid had been spying on the raiders, and had even stolen a guillotine gun from them, which he handed over to Arno after being rescued. Leon revealed that Napoleon did not trust Rose with the temple key, and had given it to a lieutenant instead. Though reluctant at first, Arno eventually decided to help Leon stop Napoleon from getting his hands on the artifact. Arno's next step was to track down 3 ancient patterns, which are key pieces to unlocking the temple's location. With clues scattered throughout Franciade, he pieced together the mystery and even uncovered the Eagle of Suja, a legendary sword linked to Isu technology. With the patterns in hand, Arno and Leon finally mapped out the temple's entrance, but of course Rose was already ahead, trying to brute force his way inside. But using his wits and the Eagle of Suja, Arno managed to solve the ancient puzzles and gain access to the temple. Inside, Arno confronted Rose and his raiders. After a fierce fight, he took down Rose and discovered the artifact that they'd been after, the Head of Saint Denis, a lamp infused with Isu power. Using its abilities, Arno escaped the temple and returned the promised manuscript to de Sade. But when it came time to leave for Egypt, Arno had a change of heart. He decided to stay in France, returning to the orphanage to share a heartfelt goodbye with Leon. Upon closer inspection of the Head of Saint Denis, Arno discovered that it contained an Apple of Eden. Understanding the danger it posed, he contacted the Assassin Brotherhood to ensure it was sent far away. In fact, it was sent to Cairo, where Napoleon and others could not get it. Through this journey, Arno rediscovered his purpose, stepping back into his role as a protector of freedom. I guess Leon was the driving force that he needed. We now move over 30 years as we get near the present day. But for now, we're in the year 1841, and we explore the events of Assassin's Creed Chronicles India, the second 2.5D side-scroller game out of 3. Now, I'll be honest, this one is probably the least exciting game out of every game in this video, so I want to brush over this pretty fast, as it's not really that interesting compared to every other game. Now, this game is set in 19th century India during the Anglo-Sikh Wars. The East India Company and the Templar Order are stirring up trouble, trying to exploit the political instability left behind by the deaths of Maharaja Ranjit Singh and his son, Karak Singh. In the middle of it all is Arbaz Mia. He's our protagonist here, as well as an assassin determined to protect the Koh-i-Noor, a very powerful Isu artifact, and stop the Templars from seizing control. Arbaz kicked things off by swiping the Koh-i-Noor from the Templars, but things go sideways pretty fast. While he's visiting his lover, Princess Piara Kaur, the Templars strike back hard. They raid the assassin hideout, reclaim the diamond, and capture Arbaz's mentor Hamid. At this point, Arbaz is determined to fight back, and eventually rescues Hamid and learns that the Templar leader William Sleeman plans to use a precursor box to uncover the diamond's secrets. Tracking Sleeman to an Isu temple, Arbaz Mir avoids deadly traps, he confronts the Templars, and narrowly escapes as the temple collapses. When the Templars head to Afghanistan, Arbaz Mir follows, using the chaos of a siege to infiltrate a precursor site. Though captured, he escapes and defeats Sleeman's ally, Alexander Burns, sparing his life and recovering the Koh-i-Noor and the precursor box as well. Back in India, Arbaz learns that the Templars have taken over the Maharaja's summer palace and are holding his lover Piara Ko hostage. In a pretty ballsy move, Arbaz distracts Sleeman, allowing Piara to strike. Now, while the Templars keep the precursor box, Arbaz secures the Koh-i-Noor, later entrusting it to Ethan Fry, a British assassin and father of two protagonists who I'll be talking about next up. Arbaz vows that the Brotherhood will one day recover the box, continuing the fight against the Templars. If you have not figured out by now, this whole fight between assassins and Templars is literally never ending. And now we move on to the final mainline entry timeline wise, and that is Assassin's Creed Syndicate, a game that takes place relatively near the present day, well, kind of. It's set during the Victorian era, and it follows a duo protagonist by the names of Evie and Jacob Fry, two siblings. At this point in time, London was under the rule of the Templar Grand Master Crawford Starrick's empire, and he had full control of literally everything. That's when Henry Green, the leader of London's struggling assassin brotherhood, called for help. And who answered? Well, it was the Fry twins, Jacob and Evie. The twins started their mission by taking down Templar operations outside of London. Jacob went after industrialist Rupert Ferris, while Evie tracked down scientist David Brewster, who was messing with a piece of Eden. Here's a fun fact. In the same room where Evie takes out David Brewster, you can find the head of the Saint Denis, something we encountered during the Dead Kings DLC in Unity. Anyway, things got pretty messy fast, and the artifact Brewster was messing with was destroyed. But the twins did not let that slow them down. They were frustrated with the Assassin Council's approach to London, so they packed their bags and headed straight to London, ready to take the fight to Starrick. Once there, they met up with Henry Green and immediately clashed over their priorities. Jacob wanted to build a gang, the Rooks, to take on Starrick's Blighters. Evie, on the other hand, was laser focused on finding the Shroud of Eden. Now, despite their differences, they teamed up to reclaim Whitechapel. They fixed up a train as their hideout, and even made some useful allies like Alexander Graham Bell, Sergeant Aberdeen and Clara O'Dear. There are a lot of historical figures in this game, and I mean a lot. Jacob wasted no time tearing into Starrick's operation. With a little help from Charles Darwin, he destroyed the Templar's soothing syrup factory, a narcotic keeping the poor under control, and took out its creator John Elliotson. Then he shifted gears to tackle Starrick's finances, killing Philip Twopenny, the mastermind behind a planned Bank of England heist. But Jacob's confident moves were not always smooth. He accidentally helped Templar Pearl Attaway before realizing she was Starrick's cousin and had been playing him all along. Well, Jacob was pissed off, so he just assassinated her too. Now things really heated up when Jacob allied with the unpredictable crime lord Maxwell Roth, who took things way too far. Roth's dangerous tactics forced Jacob to cut ties, and ultimately take him out. Meanwhile, Evie was on her own mission. She followed clues in our Black Flag protagonist Edward Kenway's mansion, and ended up facing off against Lucy Thorne, a Templar hunting down the Shroud. Though Thorne stole the key to the Shroud's vault, Evie later tracked her down at the Tower of London, and reclaimed the key and ended Thorne's mission for good. Now, despite their differences, Jacob and Evie did come together for one last mission, taking down Starrick and recovering the Shroud. Disguising themselves at Buckingham Palace during a royal ball, the twins infiltrate to the crypt beneath the palace. There they face Starrick, who had donned the Shroud, making him nearly invincible. It was a very comedy-looking fight, but with some last-minute help from Henry Green, the twins managed to overpower Starrick, remove the Shroud and kill him. Jacob returned the artifact to his vault, and the rift between him and Evie finally healed. Their work did not go unnoticed though. Queen Victoria herself knighted them for saving the Empire, and that right there is the pretty underwhelming story of Assassin's Creed Syndicate. But before we can move on from this game, there are a lot of DLC. One of them is the Last Maharaja, which is easily a top 2 worst DLC in this entire franchise. So to put things pretty brief, we just help a man named Dalip Singh become what his birthright should be, which is to be the Maharaja. And yeah, that's literally it. There is nothing remotely interesting that happens, so let's thankfully move on. The other DLC in this game is the Jack the Ripper DLC. So 20 years after the events of the base game of Syndicate, it's now 1888, and London is drowning in fear. Jack the Ripper's murders have gripped the city, and Jacob Fry is determined to put an end to the terror. But before Jacob can do anything, he's ambushed by Jack himself. Things quickly get personal very fast, as Jack reveals that he knows Jacob, and takes him down in a chilling encounter, leaving Jacob incapacitated, and at this point presumed dead. That's where his sister Evie Fry comes in. Returning from India after hearing about her brother's disappearance, she teams up with Detective Frederick Aberline to uncover what's really going on. Evie learns that the Ripper has not only taken control of London's East End, but have also turned the Rooks, their old allies, into his enforcers. As Evie digs deeper, she discovers an even more shocking truth. Jack the Ripper is not some random killer, he's an assassin initiate, somebody she had met years ago in India. Evie begins dismantling the Ripper's network piece by piece. She takes down his lieutenants, frees prisoners he's holding captive, and weakens his control over the city. All the while, Jack watches from the shadows, taunting her and setting traps, such as a particularly twisted one at the Lambeth Asylum. There, Evie uncovers the dark details of Jack's past, his time at the asylum and the torment he endured before Jacob recruited him into the Brotherhood. The pressure mounts when Aberline warns Evie that she's being implicated in one of the Jack murders. At this point, the clock is ticking. If Evie does not stop him soon, she will face arrest. As Jack's spree reaches its horrifying peak, Evie revisits his crime scenes and uncovers the grim truth. Jack's victims were all members of Jacob's assassin brotherhood. Jack blames Jacob for his mother's death at the hands of Templars, and has twisted the assassin creed into something dark and dangerous. Evie finally confronts Jack at Lambeth Asylum in a pretty tense and brutal showdown. After what seems like a never-ending battle, she manages to kill Jack and find Jacob alive, but also severely injured, locked in one of the asylum's cells. With Jack's reign of terror over, Aberline agrees to keep Jack's identity a secret, protecting the Brotherhood's anonymous nature. So in the end, the Friars bring peace back to a city haunted by fear, but not without scars of their own. Before we can move on from Assassin's Creed Syndicate, we need to travel 28 years into the future to 1916. At this point, World War I has London in a chokehold, and Lydia Fry, granddaughter of Jacob Fry and grandniece of Evie Fry, stepped up to the challenge. Lydia was not always keen on knowing her family's assassin legacy, she preferred studying to sneaking around. But after witnessing the Templars' grip on the world and losing people she cared about, she could not sit on the sidelines anymore. While her husband, fellow assassin Sam Crowder, headed up to join the army, Lydia stayed in London to protect the city. She soon caught the attention of none other than Winston Churchill, who needed help dismantling a dangerous German spy ring. Churchill promised her that if she helped, he'd push for women's voting rights after the war, an offer that Lydia could not refuse. Her mission started off with an infiltration of a spy base at Tower Bridge, where she discovered that the spies were part of a larger Templar network, led by the shadowy Master Spy. With her determination, Lydia hunted down members of the spy ring one by one, gathering intel and turning up the heat on their leader. Eventually, Lydia tracked down the Master Spy, but he managed to slip away to a heavily guarded stronghold. However, Lydia was undeterred and teamed up with Churchill's men, broke in and assassinated him. But you see, the twist is, well, it turns out the Master Spy is a sage, adding a whole new layer of mystery to the Templars' plans. With the mission complete, Lydia reported back to Winston Churchill, who thanked her for her heroics. You know, it's great to see such a character carrying on the Fry family fight, after both Jacob and Evie's time. Not that Jacob and Evie are dead, you know, they're just very old. 2 years after Lydia Fry's World War I missions in Syndicate, we now travel to Russia and experience our final 2.5D side-scroller game being Assassin's Creed Chronicles Russia. The year is 1918, and Soviet Russia is in absolute chaos. Nikolai Orlov, a tired and disillusioned assassin, just wants to leave the Brotherhood and start a new life with his family. But there's one last job that he has to take: retrieve the precursor box. You know, I'm starting to get sick of hearing about this goddamn box. Nikolai sneaks into the house where Tsar Nicholas II and his family are being held, only to witness their brutal execution by Templar agents disguised as Red Army soldiers. In the aftermath, he finds Anastasia, the youngest Romanov, miraculously alive and clutching the precursor box. The artifact has somehow connected her to Xiao Jun, giving her skills and memory she can barely handle. Nikolai is moved by her situation and decides to protect Anastasia. The two flee, dodging both Templars and Bolsheviks. Their journey leads them to Kazan during a Red Army siege, where Nikolai Orlov turns to an old friend, Leon Trotsky, for help. Unfortunately, Trotsky sides with the Templars, believing Anastasia is too dangerous to live. Nikolai is then betrayed, captured and tortured, but Anastasia breaks him out and they escape together on a boat. Now things don't get easier in Moscow. The assassins take Anastasia, claiming that they can cure her, but Nikolai discovers that they're willing to risk her life to extract the memories tied to the artifact. Nikolai refuses to let that happen and goes rogue, fighting through the Kremlin to rescue her. The two barely make it out alive, even taking down a tank in the process. In the end, Nikolai helps Anastasia disappear by giving her a new identity, Anna Anderson. She heads to Germany to start over, while Nikolai walks away from the Brotherhood for good, discouraged but standing by his principles. Their parting is bittersweet, but it gives Anastasia a chance to control her newfound powers and Nikolai the freedom that he's been seeking. And so that ends our historical timeline order. And now we need to travel to the year 2012 and relive the experience of Desmond Miles. He's a character that we've encountered from Assassin's Creed 1 in 2007 to Assassin's Creed 3 in 2012. However, I could only tell his modern day story at this point in the video, as it now makes sense. So let's now talk about Desmond Miles. In 2012, this random bartender from New York City became the main character in an ancient war between the Assassins and Templars, a war he wanted nothing to do with. Desmond did not exactly grow up with a normal childhood. He was born in a hidden assassin compound called the Farm, and was trained from an early age to fight, survive and think like an assassin. But here's the thing, he hated it. His father, William Miles, ran the place like a boot camp, and all the talk about Templars and Pieces of Eden just sounded like conspiracy nonsense to Desmond. So on his 16th birthday, he just bailed. He ran off, used his assassin skills to avoid getting caught, and eventually landed in New York City. There, he started a new life as a bartender, living under the radar and avoiding his past. For many years, he thought he was free, but spoiler alert, he wasn't. In September 2012, Desmond's peaceful life came crashing down when Abstergo, who are basically the modern day Templars in fancy suits, tracked him down. All it took was a fingerprint on his motorcycle license. They abducted him, dragged him to a high-tech lab in Italy, and plugged him into a machine called the Animus. The Animus is like a VR headset on steroids. It lets people relive their ancestors' memories through genetic memory. Abstergo did not just want Desmond, they wanted his assassin ancestors like Ezio and Altair, and the secrets buried in their DNA. As he relived Altair's life, Desmond uncovered creepy messages, scrawled in blood around his room, left by Subject 16, the Animus test subject that came before him. Desmond's escape is where things get spicy. Lucy Stillman, who was Warren Viddich's assistant, turned out to be an undercover assassin. She helped Desmond break out of the lab, fighting off Abstergo security as they fled. Desmond even got to try out a hidden blade for the first time. Lucy brought him to an assassin safe house, where he met Rebecca Crane and Sean Hastings. Together, they explained the situation. The world was facing a massive solar flare, like the one that wiped out the Isu, something I talked about right at the start of the video. Remember how I said Minerva was sending warnings to the future about another disaster? Well, you guessed it was indeed this one. To stop it, Desmond needed to relive the memories of Ezio Auditore and uncover the secrets of Isu technology. Here's where things get weird. Spending so much time in the Animus gave Desmond something called the bleeding effect, which let him inherit his ancestors' skills, like free running and eagle vision. But it also caused hallucinations. He even started seeing Subject 16, who warned him about the dangers ahead. As Desmond relived Ezio's memories, he uncovered the location of a powerful artifact, the Apple of Eden. The team raced to Rome's Colosseum to retrieve it, which if you remember, Ezio placed it there during his time. But you see, things took a dark turn. When Desmond activated the Apple, Juno, who is one of the Isu that wanted to take over the world, took control of him. Under her influence, Desmond stabbed Lucy, killing her. Juno hinted that Lucy was a traitor working for the Templars, but this left Desmond completely wrecked. He fell into a coma, and the assassins placed him back into the Animus to stabilize his mind. In his coma, Desmond's consciousness ended up in the Animus's Black Rim, a kind of failsafe mode. Here, he met with a digital ghost of Subject 16, or better known as Clay Kazmarek, who helped him piece his mind back together. Clay explained that Desmond needed to finish reliving his ancestors' memories to wake up and avoid being deleted by the Animus. This phase was all about self-discovery. As Desmond relived important moments in Altair and Ezio's life, he came to terms with his role as an assassin and the sacrifices it demanded. Slowly but surely, he regained his focus. When Desmond woke up, the assassins had tracked down the Grand Temple in upstate New York, which is the key to stopping the solar flare. If you remember, I said to remember the name Grand Temple when I was talking about Assassin's Creed 3, because this is the same one that Haytham and Ezio found. Now inside this Grand Temple, Desmond's eagle vision revealed that the temple needed power sources to activate. This sent him on a globe-trotting mission, from Manhattan skyscrapers to a Sao Paulo stadium, where he faced off against Templar operatives like Daniel Cross. As he continued to dive into the Animus, Desmond explored the memories of Haytham Kenway and his son Radon Hagedun. These memories revealed the location of a key needed to access the temple's core. With the key in hand, Desmond unlocked the Grand Temple's central chamber. Inside, he faced a heart-wrenching decision, guided by Minerva and Juno. Minerva warned that activating the temple's device would save the world from a solar flare, but released Juno, who had plans to enslave humanity. Alternatively, Desmond could let the flare hit, wiping out billions but preserving freedom. Desmond chose to save the world, believing humanity could fight back against Juno. Anyway, as Desmond touched the orb, his body was consumed by its energy, and he collapsed lifeless. His sacrifice stopped the solar flare and saved billions, but it also unleashed Juno into the modern world. After the death of Desmond, the modern day of Assassin's Creed took a massive downward spiral. In fact, it fell off so hard that the game after being Black Flag had a modern day protagonist in first person, and he was also mute. He had the nickname called Noob and was an employee at Abstergo Entertainment, so he's not even a modern day assassin. He's the opposite. It all started in October 2013 when Noob joined Abstergo as part of the Sample 17 project. The job seems straightforward. Use the Animus to relive the genetic memories of pirate Edward Kenway and gather footage for a project called Devils of the Caribbean. But things very quickly got complicated when IT head John Standish recruited Noob for some off-the-books hacking. Noob thought that they were just snooping around on files and systems for fun, but it turns out that they were aiding the assassins, passing intel to Sean Hastings and Rebecca Crane via Sean's undercover coffee stand. Remember, at this point we are playing as the bad guys in the modern day, not the assassins, so it is a bit all over the place. As Noob delved deeper into Abstergo's secrets, cracks began to form. They realized that John was unhinged, and their suspicions were confirmed when John turned out to be a sage, a reincarnation of Juno's husband Aita. John manipulated Noob into activating a program to resurrect Juno, but the plan failed, and John's true motives were exposed. In a terrifying confrontation, John tried to poison Noob, using their body as a host for Juno, but Abstergo security killed him just in time. Noob survived and returned to work. However, this experience pushed Noob to leave Abstergo by late 2014, so he was never heard from again, quite literally, because he was goddamn mute. If you thought the modern day after Desmond was bad, it gets even worse, as after Noob, we now experience another mute modern day character named Numbskull. What started as another day on the job quickly turned into something far more sinister. Numbskull was given the task of diving into the memories of Shay Cormac, a Templar who betrayed the assassins in one of the most infamous acts of treachery. Numbskull thought it would just be another data retrieval gig. He or she couldn't have been more wrong. A mysterious virus hit Abstergo's system, plunging the facility into chaos. Suddenly, Numbskull's tech skills were high in demand. Between recovering computers and recovering lost data, Numbskull unraveled Shay's story, a chilling message aimed directly at modern day assassins. Shay's memories posed a question. Even those who fight for freedom, deep down, might truly want order. When the work was done, Numbskull was called into the office of Melanie LeMay. But this was not your average performance review. Melanie, along with Violet and Juhani Otso-Berg, revealed their true identities. High-ranking Templars. And then came the ultimatum. Join the Templars or be silenced permanently. What happens next? Well, that's still a mystery. The game just ends right there. You know, I bet Ubisoft thought that cliffhanger would be cool, but it just ended up being underwhelming and it was never seen again. During the 3 years after Numbskull, not much happens in the modern day. It's just a few cutscenes with a character named Bishop and a few bits of information scattered throughout. But in 2017, we finally got a brand new Desmond Miles. Or rather an insult to Desmond Miles, and that's Layla Hassan. Now Layla wasn't exactly a rule follower. After dropping out of college, she joined Abstergo Industries, hoping to work on their famous Animus project. She was brilliant. She even created a portable Animus that could read anybody's genetic memories, not just their ancestors. But breaking the rules caught up with her. On a mission in Egypt, Layla discovered Abstergo was not a nice tech company that she thought. They were tied to the Templars. When they sent a team to kill her, she fought back using skills that she'd picked up through the Animus's bleeding effect. With nowhere else to go, she reluctantly joined the assassins, although she wasn't in all right away. Things escalated in 2018 when Layla's Animus session with Cassandra, the Spartan Mistress, led her to Atlantis. There, Cassandra handed her the Staff of Hermes Trismegistus, a powerful artifact that could grant immortality. So hey, now you know the fate of Cassandra. She died in 2018, meaning she lived for thousands of years, so fair play to her. But the staff's power came with a price. It messed up Layla's mind, and during one of the trials set for her by Minerva, she accidentally killed her teammate and best friend Victoria. By 2020, Layla teamed up with Sean Hastings and Rebecca Crane, who finally made a return after being sidelined for many years. They got a strange message that led them to the grave of Eivor, our protagonist from Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now I want you to remember that I mentioned the strange message. It'll come in handy later on. Now reliving Eivor's memories through the Animus, Layla discovered an Isu vault in Norway containing the Yggdrasil supercomputer, which held the key to fixing the Earth's electromagnetic anomalies. With the staff protecting her from deadly radiation, Layla connected to Yggdrasil and met Basim ibn Ishaq, the reincarnation of Loki. They worked together to save the Earth, but Basim betrayed her, stole the staff and escaped. Without his protection, Layla was left to die in the radiation. But that was not the end. Layla's consciousness entered the Grey, a mysterious space where she met the Reader, who is the consciousness of, you guessed it, Desmond Miles. This Reader character was analysing timelines to prevent future disasters. Layla chose to stay and help, because she realised how important this work was, essentially giving up her life to keep the world safe. Before fully merging with the Grey, Layla sent a message to Sean and Rebecca, telling them not to come looking for her. She assured them that she was at peace with her choice, and asked them to take care of the world that they still had. Remember when I talked about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I explained how Basim lost the fight against Eivor and was trapped in that grey, a kind of digital purgatory, for many centuries? Well, you see, in 2020, after literally waiting forever, Basim finally found his way back to the real world, and things got interesting really fast. Basim's big break came thanks to Desmond Miles, which is quite strange. So back in 2012, we all should know by now that his sacrifice stopped a second disaster and created a protective shield around the Earth. Over time, this messed with the planet's magnetic field and caused all these crazy anomalies. Now Basim saw his chance and sent a cryptic message to the assassins, pointing them to Eivor's grave in New England. That's what the message was when I was talking about Layla. It was from Basim. Now remember how Layla connected herself to the machine to stop the anomalies, but also Basim was in the machine too? While Basim pulled a sneaky move, used her actions to escape and left her behind. So pretty much Layla sacrificed herself to stay in the grey, as I mentioned, while Basim rejuvenated his body with the staff of Hermes that Layla had dropped, and finally broke free after centuries of waiting. Now, back in action, Basim reunited with Alethea, his lover and fellow schemer, who had been chilling in the staff of Hermes this whole time. With Odin, his old rival, long gone, Basim was ready to take on the modern world. He made his way to Layla's safe house in New England, where he ran into Sean Hastings and Rebecca Crane. Let's just say they weren't exactly excited about Layla's fate, but Basim was not fazed. He casually asked them to meet their mentor, William Mars, to discuss teaming up against the Templars. While waiting, Basim spent some time in the Animus, digging into Eivor's memories and reflecting on his connection to Loki. He even started experiencing the bleeding effect, seeing versions of Eivor and Odin. But instead of freaking out, Basim stayed focused. He had one goal: finding his lost children and bringing his family back together. When William finally connected for their meeting, Basim agreed to share his knowledge of the Isu and their tech, which, let's face it, is priceless. But William had one condition: Basim had to give a blood sample so the assassins could explore his memories. Basim agreed with a cunning smile, knowing he held all the cards. Now this wasn't the end of his story, it was just the beginning of something much bigger. Whether he's an ally or playing his own game, Basim is one of the most unpredictable characters in the modern day, and his motives are still a mystery and ongoing as of right now.